Hello guys, welcome to Pika Fiction. So in this video, we will see what if Ash defeated Leon and his prize was a harem including Sonia, Nessa, and B. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, The Unbroken King. The air in Winden Stadium didn't smell like popcorn or sweat anymore. It smelled like ozone and burnt sugar, the scent of air particles ripped apart by raw power. 100,000 people held their breath. The silence was heavier than the roar that had preceded it. In the center of the devastated pitch, where the grass had been turned to glass and the earth scorched black, two figures stood amidst the smoke. One was Leon, the unbeatable champion. His Charizard, reverted from its Gigantamax form, lay unconscious, its flame tail flickering low. Leon stood with his cap pulled down, his shoulders heaving, a smile of pure, unadulterated disbelief carving lines into his face. The other was Ash Ketchum. Ash didn't look like a boy from Pallet Town. Not in this moment. His clothes were singed, his skin smeared with soot, but his posture was upright, rigid as iron. At his feet, Pikachu stood on all fours, panting, electricity arcing softly between his red cheeks, grounding into the earth with audible snaps. The connection between trainer and Pokémon was palpable, a visible shimmer of blue aura that hadn't quite faded, a resonance that had shaken the stadium to its foundations. The match. The referee's voice cracked over the PA system, trembling. Charizard is unable to battle. The winner, and the new monarch of the World Coronation Series, is Ash Ketchum. The silence broke. It didn't shatter, it detonated. The noise was a physical wall of sound. Confetti cannons fired, but the wind from the screaming crowd blew the paper strips into spirals. Ash exhaled, the blue glow in his eyes fading to warm brown, though the intensity remained. He looked at his hands, then at Pikachu. "We did it, buddy," he whispered, his voice raspy. Pikachu climbed onto his shoulder, nuzzling his cheek. "Pika." Leon walked over. The former monarch didn't look defeated, he looked liberated. He extended a hand. "You broke the ceiling, Ash. I've been waiting a lifetime for someone to hit harder than me." Ash took the hand. The grip was solid. "You made me stronger, Leon." "Keep looking forward," Leon said, his expression darkening slightly, a flicker of something complicated crossing his eyes. "Because looking back is where the knives are." Ash frowned. "What does that mean?" Before Leon could answer, the stadium lights shifted. The celebratory gold spotlights cut out, replaced by a harsh, sterile white floodlight that blinded them both. The giant screens surrounding the stadium didn't show Ash's victory pose. Instead, they displayed the crest of the Galar High Council, a stylized shield and sword overlapping a crown. A voice, smooth and artificially amplified, echoed from the VIP box, drowning out the commentary. "Attention, citizens of Galar. Attention, former monarch Leon. Attention, champion Ash." The crowd's cheering died down, replaced by a confused murmur. Ash squinted up at the glass box high above the stands. He sensed it before he saw it, a spike in tension, a cold, calculating intent that pricked at his aura like a needle. "What is this?" Ash muttered. "Politics," Leon spat, his friendly demeanor vanishing. They wasted no time. A section of the stadium wall hissed and lowered. A platform extended, carrying a phalanx of individuals dressed in severe, ceremonial robes of deep crimson and black. At the forefront was Chancellor Thorn, a man whose face was as sharp and pale as a marble bust, flanked by armed guards and, strangely, three other figures who looked entirely out of place. Ash's eyes widened. He knew them. To the left stood Sonia. The new professor was wringing her hands, her face pale, eyes darting around the stadium as if looking for an exit. She wore a formal coat over her usual attire, looking less like a researcher and more like a prisoner of circumstance. To the right was Nessa. The gym leader of Holbury stood tall, her arms crossed, her expression a mask of icy fury. She wore a ceremonial gown that shimmered like water, but her body language screamed that she was ready to fight her way off the platform. And beside her was B. The Stoonside karate prodigy looked the most composed, but her knuckles were white. She wore traditional martial robes, her eyes scanning the crowd for threats, her body coiled like a spring. Sonia. Nessa. Ash stepped forward, confusion warring with instinct. What's going on? Chancellor Thorne stepped to the microphone. He didn't look at Ash, he looked at the cameras. Citizens, Thorne began, his voice oily. Today marks the end of an era. Leon, our beloved shield, has fallen. But nature abhors a vacuum, and Gaylor abhors weakness. Under the unification accord of the Second Dynasty, invoked only in times of great shift, the defeat of a monarch during a crisis of energy stability triggers the right of sovereignty. Crisis? Ash whispered. What crisis? The darkest day left our particles unstable, Leon murmured, stepping closer to Ash, shielding him slightly. They claim the region needs a singular, absolute ruler to stabilize the macrocosmos energy grid. They don't want a sports star, Ash. They want a king. Thorne pointed a gloved finger down at Ash. Ash Ketchum. You have conquered the unconquerable. You possess the aura of the ancients, a power verified by our sensors during this very battle. By the laws of Gaylor, you are not merely the champion. You are the keystone. I'm a Pokemon trainer, Ash shouted, his voice cutting through the feedback. I'm not a politician. The law is not a request, Thorne replied cold, his voice booming. Refusal to accept the mantle of the monarch results in the immediate dissolution of the League and the seizure of all assets, including the Pokemon of those involved, for national security. Civil war would follow within the week. The threat hung in the air. Ash felt Pikachu tense against his neck. They were holding the peace of the region hostage. Furthermore, Thorne continued, gesturing to the three women behind him. A keystone requires pillars. To ensure the stability of your reign and to unite the fractured political houses of Gaylor, the right demands a union. The wisdom of the South, the grace of the sea, and the might of the North. Ash looked at the women. Sonia looked like she might throw up. Nessa's eyes locked with Ash's, pleading and fierce all at once. B merely nodded, a grim acknowledgement of a battle she couldn't punch her way out of. You will wed these three representatives, Thorne declared, as if ordering dinner. Together, you will form the circle of sovereignty. This is the will of the council. This is the will of Gaylor. The silence returned, but this time it was terrified. Ash felt a cold rage settle in his stomach. It wasn't the hot, impulsive anger of his youth. It was something older, something he had learned from facing gods and monsters. He looked at the Chancellor, then at the exits, which were now blocked by metallic shutters. They aren't asking, Ash, Leon said quietly. If you say no, they'll arrest you. They'll arrest them. They've been planning this since Rose fell. Ash closed his eyes for a heartbeat. He reached out with his senses, aura, feeling the emotions on the platform. Sonia's terror. Nessa's humiliation. BEA's resolve. They were trapped. He opened his eyes. They glowed again, a faint, rhythmic blue pulse. Pikachu, Ash said softly. Stay here. Pika. Trust me. Ash walked forward. He crossed the scorched battlefield, his footsteps echoing on the silence. He didn't walk like a boy. He walked with the heavy, predatory grace of a Lucario. He reached the base of the platform and vaulted up, clearing the 10-foot gap with an athletic prowess that made the guards flinch. He landed directly in front of Chancellor Thorne. The politician stumbled back, intimidated by the sheer heat radiating from the trainer. You speak of laws, Ash said, his voice not amplified, yet carrying to the upper decks. You speak of stability. I I speak for Gaylor, Thorne stammered, adjusting his collar. Ash ignored him and turned to the three women. He stepped into their personal space, turning his back on the Chancellor, a deliberate insult. Sonia, Ash said gently. Ash, I. Sonia's voice trembled. They threatened the lab. They said they'd shut down Grand's research, confiscate the data. Nessa. Ash looked at the water-type expert. They blockaded Holbury, Nessa hissed, tears of rage pricking her eyes. Threatened to poison the reef if I didn't get on the transport. Ash turned to B. My dojo, B said simply, her jaw set. And my students. Ash nodded. He turned back to Thorne. The Chancellor regained his composure, smiling smugly. You see, champion. It is a necessary sacrifice. Accept the crown. Accept your brides. Ensure the future. Ash looked at the cameras, then at the crowd. He grabbed the microphone from the stand, tearing it free from its wires with a spark of feedback, holding it like a weapon. You want a king? Ash asked. The crowd murmured. You want someone to keep the peace. He stepped closer to Thorne, the blue aura flaring up, making the air around him drop 20 degrees. Frost began to crackle on the metal railing. I accept the title, Ash said, and the stadium erupted, but he cut them off with a sharp gesture. But hear this. I am not accepting this because of your laws. And I am not accepting this to play your game. He walked back to the girls, placing himself between them and the council. It was a protective stance, territorial and absolute. These three are not bargaining chips, Ash announced, his voice hard as diamond. They are not pillars for you to hide behind. If they stand with me, they stand as my equals. And if you touch their homes, if you touch one hair on a student's head or one drop of water in that reef, I won't need a Pokemon battle to dismantle this council. He looked directly into the camera lens. I defeated Leon. I have faced legendaries you only read about in books. Do not think you can control me. He crushed the microphone in his hand, the metal groaning and crumpling into a ball of scrap. He dropped it at Thorne's feet. Now, Ash said, turning to the women, his expression softening instantly. Let's get out of here. I think we're done with the show. Ash, Sonia breathed, the color returning to her cheeks. You realize what you just did? You just declared yourself the military dictator of Gaylor. I bought us time, Ash muttered, guiding them toward the lift Leon was holding open. We need to talk. Somewhere without cameras. As they stepped into the elevator, the heavy doors sliding shut to block out the screaming crowd and the stunned Chancellor, the adrenaline finally crashed. Ash leaned against the metal wall, sliding down until he hit the floor. Pikachu hopped into his lap. The three women stood over him. The dynamic had shifted. They weren't just friends anymore, they were legally bound allies in a coup they hadn't started. Nessa was the first to speak. She smoothed her dress, looking down at Ash with a critical, evaluating eye. You have no idea how to run a country, Ash. Nope, Ash admitted, closing his eyes. But I know how to stop bullies. We'll figure the rest out. Be crouched down, eye level with him. For the first time, she looked at him not as a rival, but as a leader. You protected us, she said. Tactically, it was reckless. Emotionally, it was effective. We're in a mess, Ash, Sonia added, checking her Rotom phone, which was exploding with notifications. Trending worldwide. The Warrior King. The Harem of the Monarch. It's a disaster. Ash opened one eye and grinned. It was the old Ash grin, goofy, confident, and infectious. We've been in worse messes. Remember the time with the darkest day? Or that time in Alola with the Ultra Beasts? This is different, Nessa sighed, though a small smile tugged at her lips. We can't thunderbolt our way out of a marriage contract, Ash. Watch me, Ash said. The elevator dinged. The doors opened to the underground garage. But instead of a limo, a massive, armored transport vehicle was waiting, black and unmarked. "That's not the League transport," Leon said, stepping out first, his hand going to the pokeball at his belt. The back of the transport hissed open. A dozen figures in high-tech stealth gear stepped out, weapons raised. Not guns, but capture stylers modified for lethality. Target acquired, a mechanical voice synthesized from a helmet speaker. Secure the Monarch. Eliminate the pillars. Ash was on his feet in a microsecond. The exhaustion vanished, replaced by the fluid instinct of a veteran. "Get behind me," Ash ordered, his voice commanding. No, Bee stepped up, kicking off her ceremonial heels. She took a combat stance. "We are not damsels, Monarch." Nessa grabbed a pokeball from her concealed clutch. "I've been wanting to hit something all day." Sonia stepped back, tapping furiously on her phone. "I'll jam their comms. Buy me 30 seconds. Ash looked at them, his team. A smile, sharp and dangerous, crossed his face. "All right," Ash said, electricity sparking around him as Pikachu charged up. Chapter 1 of the New Reign. Let's make it a loud one. As the mercenaries charged, Ash didn't shout a command. He simply moved, and the world seemed to slow down around him. The king had arrived. Chapter 1 end. Chapter 2, The Gilded Cage. The attack in the stadium garage ended as abruptly as it began, a violent crescendo that lasted less than 3 minutes. Ash stood amidst the wreckage of a sedan, his chest heaving, the air around him still crackling with the aftershocks of a thunderbolt that had overloaded the facility's sprinkler system. Water rained down from the concrete ceiling, mixing with the hydraulic fluid of the incapacitated stealth drones. "Clear," Bee announced, her voice calm but tight. She stood over a groaned mercenary, her bare foot pressed effectively against his windpipe. She hadn't used a Pokémon, she had dismantled the man's guard with a devastating palm strike that Ash had barely tracked. "Sonia." Ash called out, wiping wet hair from his eyes. "I'm okay," Sonia's voice came from behind the armored transport. She was trembling, clutching her tablet like a shield, but her eyes were glued to the sparking remains of the lead drone. "Ash, this tech, it's not macrocosmos. The circuitry is organic. It's bleeding." Ash walked over, the water sizzling as it hit his skin. He felt the hum of the machine before he saw it, a discordant, sickly energy that made his aura recoil. It felt wrong. It felt like the silence after a scream. "We need to move," Leon said, stepping out of the shadows. The former champion had his Charizard out, its tail flame illuminating the dark corners of the garage. Leon looked grim, the carefree athlete replaced by a man who had just realized how small the fence around his yard really was. "Thorn's private guard is coming down the ramp. If they find us standing over a pile of unconscious Black Ops agents, the narrative spins out of control." "Let it spin," Nessa snapped, recalling her dreadnought. She looked furious, her ceremonial gown ruined by oil and water. "They tried to kidnap us, Leon. And if we admit that, we admit Galar is unstable," Ash said, his voice low. He looked at the unconscious attackers. "We go to the palace. We play the part. But we don't play by their rules." He looked at the 3 women. They were wet, shaken, and looking to him for the next move. "I promised you'd be safe," Ash said, meeting each of their gazes. "I meant it. Everyone gets in the truck. Leon, you drive." Winden Palace was not a home. It was a museum designed to look like a fortress, or perhaps a prison designed to look like a museum. 3 days had passed since the coronation. 3 days of silence, velvet ropes, and an army of staff who moved like ghosts. The royal wing, a section of the palace that hadn't been inhabited since the Second Dynasty, had been hastily prepared for the new monarch and his circle. It was suffocating. Ash stood on the balcony of the master suite, looking out over the sprawling city of Winden. The wind was cold, biting at his exposed arms, but he didn't feel it. He wore the heavy, high-collared tunic the stewards had insisted upon, midnight blue with gold embroidery, but he had left the collar unbuttoned and the sleeves rolled up. "You're pacing again." Ash turned. Sonia was sitting at the antique mahogany desk in the corner of the massive room, surrounded by holographic displays. She looked exhausted, dark circles bruising the skin under her eyes. She had swapped the ceremonial dress for a pair of oversized sweatpants and one of Ash's hoodies, which she had stolen from his bag without asking. "I can't breathe in here, Sonia," Ash admitted, leaning against the stone railing. "Every door has a guard. Every meal is a ceremony. I haven't seen Pikachu run in 72 hours. "Pikachu is currently being pampered by the royal chefs," Sonia murmured, not looking up from her data streams. "I believe he is eating a pecha berry tart glazed with gold leaf." "He's going to get fat," Ash grumbled. "He's coping," Sonia corrected. She tapped a key, and a 3D model of the drone from the garage rotated in the air. "Unlike us. Ash, look at this." Ash walked over, leaning over her shoulder. The proximity was natural, born of shared crisis. He smelled her shampoo, lavender and something chemical, like printer ink. "The drone's CPU wasn't silicon," Sonia explained, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It was grown. Synthetic nervous tissue fused with metal. This is type, null technology, Ash. But, refined. Mass-produced." Ash's grip on the back of her chair tightened. "Gladion's partner? That was unique. It was created to fight ultra beasts." "Exactly. Someone is trying to recreate the God Killer project." Sonia shivered, and Ash instinctively placed a hand on her shoulder to steady her. She leaned into the touch, just for a second, before straightening up. "If the Syndicate has this, they aren't just terrorists. They have resources that rival the League." The heavy oak doors creaked open. Ash spun around, his hand drifting to his belt, but it was just Nessa and B. The tension in the room spiked. The living arrangement was complicated. Technically, they were all betrothed. Practically, they were four strangers trapped in a luxury bunker. Nessa strode in, looking like a storm cloud. She was dressed in a sharp business suit, holding a tablet. "Thorn is downstairs. He's demanding an audience." "Tell him I'm asleep," Ash said. "He says it's about the Unity Gala tonight," Nessa continued, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Apparently, the monarch and his queens are expected to dance for the donors. It's being televised." B followed her in, closing the door firmly. She was the only one who seemed unaffected by the luxury, treating the palace like a dojo. She wore a simple training GI, her feet bare on the expensive Persian rugs. "I do not dance," B stated flatly. "And I do not like Thorn. His breathing is shallow. He hides things." "We all hide things," Nessa shot back, collapsing onto a velvet chaise lounge. "Like the fact that we're prisoners in our own capital." "We aren't prisoners," Ash said. "Really?" Nessa raised an eyebrow, her eyes flashing. "Try leaving the front gate, Ash. See what happens. The press is camped out 20 deep. The royal guard escorts us to the bathroom. You might be the king, but you're just the figurehead. Thorn is steering the ship." Ash looked at them, Nessa's frustration, Sonia's fear, BEA's restless aggression. They were being ground down. If he played the game Thorn wanted, he would lose them. He would lose himself. He looked back at the holographic drone. "Sonia," Ash said, his voice changing tone. It was the tone he used when he turned his cap backward. "Where did the signal for these drones originate?" Sonia blinked. I traced the carrier wave to a localized interference pattern. It's in the wild area. The watchtower ruins. Is it active? Ideally, no. It's a ruin. But the energy reading suggests a subterranean power draw. Ash nodded. He walked to the center of the room. Nessa, he said. Do you have your team? I always have my team. B. Can you fight in formal wear? B looked at him as if he were stupid. I can fight in a sack, Monarch. Good. Ash grinned. Because we're not going to the gala. Thorn won't let us leave, Sonia warned, standing up. The security protocols, I'm the Monarch, Ash interrupted. I make the protocols. We're going to the watchtower. Tonight. To do what? Nessa asked, sitting up. Picnic. To hunt, Ash said, his eyes hardening. They hit us. We hit them back. We show them that this king bites. The escape was embarrassingly easy, which only proved Nessa's point about them being figureheads. The guards were trained to keep people out, not to stop the monarch from taking a royal inspection tour of the perimeter. Ash didn't ask for permission. He simply walked out the side gate of the palace grounds, flanked by the three women, and told the captain of the guard, "We are inspecting the wild area breaches. Prepare a transport." When the captain hesitated, citing safety protocols, B stepped forward and cracked her knuckles. The captain prepared the transport. An hour later, they were deep in the wild area. The weather had turned, as it always did in Galar. Heavy rain lashed against the windows of the off-road vehicle, turning the rolling hills into a blur of gray and green. Ash drove. He drove fast. You drive like a maniac, Nessa observed from the passenger seat, gripping the handle as the vehicle caught air over a ridge. I learned to drive on a Toros, Ash replied, wrestling the wheel. In the back, Sonia was monitoring the scanners. Signal getting stronger. We're closing in on the watchtower. Ash, be careful. The energy density here is odd. It's suppressing the ambient aura. I feel it, Ash said. The usual hum of life, the buzz of wild Pokemon, the flow of the wind, was dampened, like sound underwater. It made his head ache. They parked the vehicle a mile out to avoid detection. The rain was torrential now. Ash jumped out, Pikachu instantly taking shelter inside his waterproof jacket, just peeking his head out near the collar. Stay close, Ash ordered, his voice barely audible over the wind. They moved through the tall grass. B took point, her movement silent despite the mud. Nessa covered the rear, her eyes scanning the gloom. Sonia stayed glued to Ash's side. The watchtower ruins loomed ahead, a broken skeleton of stone against the stormy sky. Ghost types usually haunted this area, but tonight, it was empty. There, B whispered, holding up a hand. In the center of the ruins, beneath the crumbling archway, the air was shimmering. It wasn't a portal, it was camouflage. A refraction field. Active camo, Sonia hissed. That's military grade. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook. Scree. The sound wasn't a roar, it was a digital screech of corrupted audio. The camouflage field dropped, revealing three massive, quadrupedal shapes. They looked like Sylvie, but wrong. Their armor was rusted, jagged, bolted directly into flesh. Their eyes were lifeless red optics. Prototypes, Sonia gasped, backing up. Type, nulls. But they've been stripped of their limiters. 3 of them, B said, sliding into a stance. 1 for each of us. No, Ash said, stepping forward. They're focused on me. He was right. The 3 beasts ignored the women, their optic sensors locking onto the high-density aura source that was Ash Ketchum. Target, Monarch, a mechanical voice synthesized from the beast's collars. Initiate purge. The first beast lunged. It moved with unnatural speed, a blur of claws and metal. Pikachu, Iron Tail. Ash shouted. Pikachu launched from Ash's shoulder, slamming a steel-hard tail into the beast's helmet. It should have cracked the armor. Instead, the beast didn't even flinch. A pulse of gray energy rippled from its helmet, nullifying the attack instantly. Pikachu bounced off, looking stunned. It dampened the move. Ash realized. They have ability blockers. The second beast flanked, aiming for Sonia. Macamp. B roared, throwing a pokeball. Her four-armed ace materialized, catching the beast's charging jaws with two hands, grappling it. But the beast's strength was hydraulic, relentless. It began to crush Machamp's grip. Dreadnought, hydro pump. Nessa commanded. The stream of water hit the third beast, but the creature's scales shifted color, turning green, grass-type. It absorbed the hit. RKS system, Sonia cried out. They can change types to counter attacks. We can't beat them with type matchups. The first beast, the one Pikachu had hit, lunged for Ash again. This time, Pikachu was out of position. Ash didn't retreat. He didn't run. He stepped in. Ash! Nessa screamed. Ash dropped his shoulder and slammed his body weight into the beast's chest plate. It was insane. A human tackling a 400-pound bioweapon. But Ash reinforced his body with aura, a blue flare erupting around him. Crunch. The impact stopped the beast's momentum for a split second, long enough for Ash to grab its metallic collar. Lucario, Aura Sphere. Point blank. Ash's Lucario burst from its ball, materializing in the air. Ash held the beast in place, his boots sliding in the mud, muscles screaming as the creature thrashed. Lucario drove a sphere of pure energy into the beast's exposed underbelly, bypassing the armor. The explosion blew Ash backward into the mud, but the beast collapsed, its machinery smoking. One down. Ash coughed, scrambling up. Don't use elements. Use physics. Hit them hard. B saw it. She saw the monarch of Galar wrestling a monster in the mud. Something in her clicked. Macamp, release. B ordered. Dynamic punch, no elemental energy. Just brute force. Macamp roared, abandoning his glowing fists for raw muscle, driving a flurry of blows into the second beast's joints. Metal buckled. Nessa gritted her teeth. Dreadnought, jaw lock. Crush the legs. The battle was brutal, messy, and primal. Without their elemental powers, the Pokémon had to fight like wild animals. And their trainers had to be right there with them. Ash was everywhere. He was shouting coordinates to Nessa, pulling Sonia out of the line of fire, and coordinating attacks with B. When the final beast fell, twitching and sparking in the rain, silence returned to the ruins. Ash stood in the center of the carnage, his expensive tunic ripped to shreds, mud covering him from head to toe. He was bleeding from a cut above his brow. He wiped the blood away and looked at his queens. Is everyone okay? He asked, panting. B stared at him. She was breathing hard, her GI soaked. She walked over to him, her eyes wide. She looked at the dead machine, then at Ash. You tackled it, she said. It wasn't a question. It was going for Pikachu, Ash shrugged, wincing as he touched his ribs. Instinct. That was not strategy, B said, her voice low. That was stupidity. It worked, Ash said. B paused. Then, slowly, a grin spread across her face, a rare, genuine expression that transformed her stoic features. It was magnificent. Nessa recalled her Dreadnought, walking over while wringing out her hair. She looked at the ruin of Ash's clothes. The council is going to kill you. You missed the gala to play in the mud. Let them talk, Ash said. He turned to Sonia. Did you get the data? Sonia was kneeling by the head of the first beast, extracting a memory chip with trembling hands. She looked up, her eyes bright with adrenaline and fear. I got it. And Ash, this chip? It has a GPS log. It's been transmitting data to a location in the Crown Tundra. Then that's where we go next, Ash said. Not tonight, Nessa interjected, her voice firm but softer than before. She reached out, surprisingly, and brushed a smudge of mud off Ash's cheek. Her fingers lingered for a second. You're bleeding, Your Majesty. And if you collapse, I'm not carrying you back to the car. Ash chuckled, but the adrenaline was fading, and the pain was setting in. Fair enough. They walked back to the vehicle in the rain. But the formation had changed. They weren't walking behind him anymore. They were walking around him. A phalanx. Inside the rover, the heater blasted hot air. Ash sat in the driver's seat, head tipped back, eyes closed. Ash, Sonia said softly from the back. Yeah. Thank you. Ash opened one eye. For what? For not leaving us at the palace. For letting us fight. Ash turned in his seat to look at them. I told you, he said, his voice serious. I don't need pillars. I need partners. If we're going to survive this, if we're going to survive me being king, we do it together. Bee crossed her arms, leaning back. You fight like a brawler, not a king. But I can work with that. Nessa rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. Just try to shower before we face the press, Ketchum. Ash laughed, and for the first time in 3 days, the crushing weight of the crown felt a little lighter. He put the car in gear. They had a long drive back to Winden, and a war to plan. But as they drove through the storm, the silence in the car wasn't awkward anymore. It was comfortable. The king had his circle. And the circle had seen the fire. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3, Tides of Iron. The war room of Winden Palace was a sterile cavern of brushed steel and holographic maps, designed to make its occupants feel like gods moving pieces on a board. Currently, it felt more like a cage. Chancellor Thorne stood at the head of the obsidian table, his face flushed a blotchy red that clashed with his pristine collar. He slammed a fist onto the surface, causing the digital map of Galar to flicker. You left the palace grounds without an escort, Thorne hissed, his voice trembling with contained rage. You engaged unauthorized combatants in a historical site. And you destroyed a priceless section of the watchtower ruins. Do you have any concept of optics, Your Majesty? Ash sat at the opposite end of the table. He hadn't changed out of his field clothes from the night before, his jeans were stiff with dried mud, and there was a bandage taped over a cut on his cheek. He was cleaning a pokeball with a microfiber cloth, refusing to look at the politician. We found the source of the drones, Ash said calmly. We neutralized it. You're welcome. You are not a vigilante. Thorne shouted, losing his composure. You are the monarch. You exist to sign treaties and wave from balconies, not to wrestle cyborgs in the mud. Sonia, sitting to Ash's right, cleared her throat. She looked exhausted, fueled only by coffee and anxiety. Chancellor, the data we recovered proves a coordinated effort to weaponize type, null technology. This isn't a PR issue. It's an act of war. It is a police matter. Thorne countered. One that should be handled by professionals, not, a jagged, crimson siren cut through the room. The holographic map shifted instantly. The serene blue of the coastline turned a violent, pulsing red. A mechanical voice, devoid of emotion, filled the air. Alert. Biological hazard detected. Location, Hulbury Port. Toxicity levels critical. Mass Pokémon casualty event in progress. The color drained from Nessa's face. She had been leaning against the wall, arms crossed, bored by the politics. Now, she was a statue of horror. Hulbury, she whispered. Ash was on his feet before the siren finished its first loop. Show me the feed. The central screen maximized. The footage was shaky, taken from a dockside security camera. The usually pristine, azure waters of Hulbury's harbor were churning with a thick, violet sludge. Dead Magikarp floated on the surface. On the docks, fishermen were running, screaming, as a massive shape thrashed in the polluted surf. Is that? Bee squinted at the screen. It's a dreadnought, Nessa choked out. But it's wrong. It's in pain. Isolate the sector, Thorn barked at his aides. Quarantine the city. No one in or out. We can't let this spread to the press. Quarantine? Nessa spun on him, her eyes blazing. My people are down there. That poison is killing the reef. We must assess the risk, Thorn said smoothly, regaining his mask of indifference. If we send resources now, we admit vulnerability. We will send a containment team in 12 hours. Ash walked past Thorn. He didn't look at him. He didn't stop. Where are you going? Thorn demanded. 12 hours is too long, Ash said, the doors hissing open as he approached. We're leaving. Now. I forbid it. Thorn shrieked. The Royal Guard will not, Ash stopped. He turned his head slightly, his eyes flashing with that same terrifying, electric blue that had silenced the stadium. I'm not taking the Royal Guard, Ash said. I'm taking my team. The flight to Hulbury on Leon's Charizard and Ash's Dragonite took 20 minutes. It felt like 20 years. Nessa rode behind Ash on Dragonite, her grip on his waist tight enough to bruise. She didn't speak, but Ash could feel her trembling against his back. It wasn't fear, it was a potent mix of rage and heartbreak. As they descended through the cloud layer, the smell hit them first. It wasn't the clean brine of the sea. It was the stench of rotten eggs and burning plastic. Arceus. Sonia gasped from Charizard's back. Below them, the harbor was a disaster zone. The violet sludge had spread from the industrial outflow pipes, staining the bay like ink in water. The civilian panic was absolute. People were fleeing the boardwalk as waves of toxic sludge splashed over the concrete. In the center of the chaos, a Gigantamax dreadnought was rampaging. It wasn't fighting a trainer, it was fighting the agony in its own gills. It reared up, crashing down onto the pier, smashing a row of market stalls into splinters. Land us near the lighthouse. Ash shouted over the wind. Dragonite banked hard, slamming onto the wet pavement of the upper promenade. Ash and Nessa slid off before the dragon had fully stopped. B, clear the civilians. Ash ordered. Get them to high ground. Sonia, I need an analysis of that sludge, find out what neutralizes it. On it. B was already sprinting toward the panic, pokeballs expanding in her hands. Nessa ran to the railing, staring down at the water. It's coming from the main filtration intake. Someone sabotaged the purification plant. If we don't seal it, the current will drag this poison out to the oceanic shelf. It'll kill everything for 50 miles. Then we seal it, Ash said. The intake is 40 meters down, Nessa cried, her voice cracking. And look at the water, Ash. It's acid. I can't send my Pokemon in there, it'll burn their skin off. Ash looked at the purple churn. She was right. Even water types would be corroded by that concentration. We can't wait for the levels to drop, Ash said, unclipping his utility belt. He pulled off his vest, revealing the black compression shirt underneath. Nessa, can you guide me to the valve? Nessa stared at him. What? You can't go down there. You're human. I've done deep dives before, Ash said, kicking off his boots. And I've got help. He grabbed a pokeball. Dracovish, I choose you. The fossil Pokemon materialized with a wet slap on the pavement, looking confused but eager. Its ancient, hardened hide was tougher than modern scales. Ash, no. Nessa grabbed his arm. Her grip was desperate. That isn't water anymore. It's chemical waste. You'll melt. Ash looked at her. He placed his hand over hers. His skin was warm, unnaturally so. "Trust me," he said. "I'm harder to kill than I look." He closed his eyes. Nessa watched, stunned, as the air around him warped. A visible aura, blue and rippling like heat haze, coated his skin, forming a translucent barrier. It was the same power he had used to withstand attacks in the stadium, but focused, condensed into a second skin. "Guide me," Ash repeated. He vaulted over the railing. The impact with the water was like hitting a wall of ice. Ash opened his eyes. The world was a blur of murky violet. The toxin burned, sizzling against his aura shield, demanding entry. He could feel the drain immediately, his energy reserves being chewed away to keep the acid from touching his flesh. "Hold it," he told himself. "Focus." He grabbed Drakovish's dorsal fin. The Pokémon seemed bothered by the water but unharmed, its prehistoric biology resistant to the modern poison. "Down, buddy. To the pipes." Ash pointed. Dracovish kicked its powerful legs, driving them deeper. 10 meters. 20. The light from the surface vanished, replaced by the eerie, bioluminescent glow of the chemical sludge. Ash's lungs began to burn, not from lack of air, but from the pressure of the aura compression. He saw the intake station ahead, a massive grate that had been blown open. Metal twisted outward like a flower. From the darkness of the pipe, thick black canisters were spewing the violet agent. He needed to plug it. He released Dracovish and swam toward the breach. The current was violent, trying to push him away. He grabbed the jagged metal of the grate, the edges tearing at his aura shield. He saw the source. 3 large drums, welded to the floor of the pipe, timers blinking red on their sides. They weren't just leaking, they were pumping. Ash tried to pull one free. It wouldn't budge. Think. He couldn't break them. He had to block the pipe. He looked around. The seabed was littered with debris from the explosion. A massive slab of concrete, part of the old seawall, lay nearby. It weighed easily 2 tons. Ash kicked off the pipe, swimming to the slab. He placed his hands on it. "Lucario," he projected the thought, feeling the bond in his mind. "Lend me your strength." On the surface, inside his ball, Lucario meditated, channeling every ounce of its fighting spirit down the bond. Underwater, Ash's blue glow intensified, turning blindingly bright. The water around him hissed, boiling from the energy output. He shoved. The slab groaned. Slowly, agonizingly, it scraped across the sand. Ash's muscles screamed. The aura shield flickered, a drop of acid water touching his cheek, searing like a brand. He ignored it. Push. With a final, silent roar, he heaved the slab over the intake breach. The suction of the pipe grabbed the concrete, slamming it flush against the hole. The flow of violet sludge stopped. Ash sagged, the adrenaline crashing. His vision spotted. He was out of air. He was out of power. He looked up. The surface was 1,000,000 miles away. Darkness crept in at the edges of his vision. He felt Dracovish nudge him, but his limbs were lead. Then, a shape cut through the gloom. Sleek, fast, and graceful. Nessa. She wasn't wearing gear. She had dived in with nothing but a rebreather mask and sheer will. She grabbed him, wrapping her arm around his chest. She kicked for the surface, her movements powerful and frantic. She had come for him. They broke the surface with a splash that sounded like salvation. Ash gasped, the air rushing into his starved lungs, burning and sweet. He was dragged onto the wooden dock by strong hands, Bee and Leon pulling him up. He collapsed on the wet wood, coughing up salt water. His skin was red and irritated where the aura had failed, but he was whole. "You idiot." Nessa was on top of him before he could sit up. She ripped the rebreather off her face, her eyes wild, hair plastered to her skull. She shoved his shoulder. "You reckless, stupid, impossible man." She was shouting, but her voice was thick with tears. "You could have died. For what? A pipe?" Ash propped himself up on his elbows, wincing. He looked at her, really looked at her. The composed, icy model was gone. This was the gym leader who loved the sea more than her own life. "For your home," Ash rasped. He managed a weak smile. "We stopped it." Nessa stared at him. Her anger crumbled, replaced by a look of profound shock. She looked at the water. The violet churn was dissipating, the natural blue slowly fighting its way back as the tides flushed the bay. She looked back at Ash. Her hand moved, almost involuntarily, to touch the burn mark on his cheek. "You," she whispered. "You really are crazy." "Alert." BEA's voice cut the moment. "The dreadnought. It's not calming down." Ash struggled to his feet, swaying. Nessa steadied him, her arm firm around his waist. The Gigantamax dreadnought was still thrashing near the stadium, blinded by pain. It roared, gathering energy for a G-Max stone surge. "It's confused," Nessa said, her voice hardening into command. "The toxins are gone, but the pain is lingering. It thinks everything is an enemy." "We need to sedate it," Leon shouted, reaching for a pokeball. "Charizard can." "No," Nessa said. "If we attack it now, it will never trust humans again. It's scared." She stepped forward, leaving Ash's side. She walked to the edge of the pier, facing the 100-foot monster. "Nessa," Sonia warned. "Cover me," Nessa said. She looked back at Ash. "Can you keep its attention?" Ash nodded. He wiped the blood from his mouth. "Pikachu. Electro web. Catch the rocks, don't hit the dreadnought. Pika." Ash ran forward, drawing the dreadnought's gaze. The beast roared, firing massive jagged stones. Pikachu leaped, weaving a net of electricity that caught the debris in mid-air, suspending it harmlessly. "Hey! Over here!" Ash yelled, waving his arms. He was the distraction. The target. The dreadnought lunged, its massive jaws snapping shut inches from Ash, who slid underneath the strike. While the beast focused on the electric mouse and the loud boy, Nessa began to sing. It wasn't a move. It was an old sailor's melody, a low, humming tune that carried over the crashing waves. She walked out onto the floating debris, moving with a terrifying grace toward the giant Pokémon. "Shoo," she soothed, raising her hands. "The water is clear. The pain is fading." The dreadnought hesitated. It looked from the buzzing Pikachu to the woman standing fearlessly in its shadow. Ash held his breath. He signaled Pikachu to power down. He stood perfectly still, letting Nessa take the lead. Nessa reached out. She was tiny compared to the mountain of shell and muscle. She placed her hand on the dreadnought's nose. "Sleep," she commanded softly. "Rest." The red glow in the dreadnought's eyes faded. The Gigantamax energy swirled away in a cloud of pink light, shrinking the Pokémon back to its normal size. It collapsed into the shallow water, exhausted but peaceful. Silence fell over the harbor. The fishermen, who had been hiding behind crates, began to cheer. It started as a ripple and grew into a roar. They weren't cheering for the monarch. They were cheering for Nessa. Nessa didn't look at the crowd. She turned and walked back to Ash. She looked at his burned skin, his exhausted posture. "You backed me up," she said softly. "You didn't try to save me. You let me do it." "It's your city, Nessa," Ash said. "I'm just the guest." Nessa's eyes searched his face. For the first time, the political alliance didn't feel like a shackle. It felt like a partnership. "Come on," she said, taking his hand. My apartment is closer than the palace. I have salve for those burns. An hour later, the sun was setting, casting a blood-orange glow over the recovering harbor. They were gathered in Nessa's penthouse living room, which overlooked the sea. Ash was sitting on the couch, shirtless, while Nessa applied a cool, blue gel to his ribs. B was pacing by the window. Leon was on the phone with the League, doing damage control. Sonia walked in from the balcony, holding a heavy, corroded object wrapped in a towel. It was the canister Ash had dislodged. Ash, Nessa, Sonia said, her voice grave. You need to see this. She set the canister on the coffee table. She wiped away the grime from the metal casing. Etched into the steel wasn't a manufacturer's logo. It was a symbol. A jagged, geometric eye surrounded by a wreath of thorns. Nessa frowned. I don't recognize that company. It's not a company, Sonia said. She tapped her tablet, projecting an image of an ancient tapestry. This is a scan from the vault in Hammerlock. It depicts the darkest days of the First Dynasty. She pointed to a banner carried by the enemies of the ancient heroes. It bore the same jagged eye. This is the crest of the exiled, Sonia explained. A faction of knights who believed that the darkest day was not a disaster, but a cleansing. They believed that Zacian and Zamazenta were false idols who stole the power of the stars. So we're fighting historians? Ash asked, wincing as Nessa tightened a bandage. We're fighting zealots, Sonia corrected. This Dr. Verglass, he isn't just using old tech. He's reviving an old religion. He believes that by severing the bond between humans and Pokemon, he's returning the world to its pure state. Ash looked at the symbol. He thought about the type, null beasts. He thought about the poison in the water. They hate the bond, Ash said quietly. That's why they target us. That's why they target the monarch. He stood up, ignoring Nessa's protest. He walked to the window, looking at his reflection. He didn't look like a kid from Pallet Town anymore. He looked like a king who had just realized the size of the war he was in. They want to break the bond, Ash said, his voice hard. So we're going to show them a bond they can't break. He turned to the three women. We're going to the pilgrimage, Ash announced. Bee stopped pacing. Her head snapped up. The pilgrimage of Stow-on-Side? Ash, that is a martial trial. It is for those who seek to master the body. It has nothing to do with politics. It has everything to do with strength, Ash said. The council thinks I'm a figurehead. The syndicate thinks I'm a target. I need to show them I'm neither. He looked at B. You said I fight like a brawler. Teach me to fight like a warrior. B stared at him. A slow, predatory smile touched her lips. She bowed her head, a gesture of genuine respect. It will break you, monarch. Good, Ash said. Then build me back up. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4, The Fist of the Old Gods. The pilgrimage of Stow-on-Side was not merely a hike, it was an execution of the ego. 3,000 stone steps carved directly into the sheer face of the mountain, winding up through the cloud layer like a jagged scar. The air grew thinner with every 100 feet, and the wind howled with a voice that sounded suspiciously like mocking laughter. Your breathing is ragged, B said. She was 3 steps ahead of him, her breathing rhythm steady, almost silent. She wore her training GI, carrying a heavy rucksack as if it were filled with feathers. The air is thin, monarch. There is no shame in turning back. The council does not need to know. Ash wiped sweat from his eyes. His legs burned. The air in his lungs felt like broken glass. He wasn't carrying a pack, but he was carrying Pikachu, who refused to go into his ball, adding 6 kilograms of weight to his shoulders. If I turn back, Ash wheezed, forcing his foot onto the next step, I don't get to see the view. B stopped. She turned to look down at him. Her gray eyes were unreadable, cold as the mountain mist. This is not a sightseeing tour, she said sharply. The pilgrimage is an ancient rite. It strips away the help of Pokemon. It strips away titles. Up here, you are only meat and bone. If you are weak, the mountain breaks you. I know, Ash said. He straightened up, finding a second wind through sheer stubbornness. That's why I'm here. To see if I break. Bee studied him for a moment longer, then nodded once. Then keep up. They climbed in silence for another hour. The vegetation thinned out, replaced by jagged rock and patches of old snow. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the cliff face. Ash focused on Bea's back. Her movements were perfect, economic, fluid. She wasted no energy. Ash, by contrast, was fighting the mountain. Every step was a battle. But he was winning. Rest, Bee ordered suddenly, turning off the stairs onto a small, flat plateau carved into the rock. It was an old shrine marker, weathered by centuries of storms. Ash collapsed onto a flat stone, his chest heaving. Pikachu hopped off, stretching his limbs and sniffing the thin air. Here, Bee tossed him a canteen. Ash caught it, drank greedily, and wiped his mouth. Thanks. You have endurance, Bee admitted, sitting in a lotus position near the cliff edge. Most trainers rely so heavily on their partners that their own bodies atrophy. You have, farmer strength. Unrefined, but functional. I've done a lot of walking, Ash grinned weakly. Walking is not fighting, Bee said. She stood up, walking to the edge of the plateau. The syndicate knows we are here. They will not send Pokemon. Pokemon are loud. They draw attention. If they come for us on the mountain, they will come with steel. Ash's smile faded. He sensed the shift in her tone. You think they're already here? Bee didn't answer. She tilted her head, her ribbon dancing in the wind. She closed her eyes. For heartbeats, she whispered. Heavy boots. No rhythm. Ash felt it then. A prickle on the back of his neck. His aura flared, a sharp warning spike, danger. Left. Down. Ash roared. He didn't think, he lunged, tackling Bee around the waist and driving them both into the dirt behind the stone shrine. Thwip. A high-velocity tranquilizer dart shattered against the rock where Bee had been standing a millisecond before. Contact, a voice shouted from the mist above. 4 figures rappelled down from the cliff face above the stairs. They were clad in matte gray tactical gear, faces obscured by thermal goggles. They didn't hold pokeballs. They held collapsible shock batons and tactical crossbows. Stay down, Pikachu. Ash ordered. No thunderbolts. The flash will blind us in this mist. Bee rolled out of Ash's grip, springing to her feet like a cat. Her expression wasn't fearful. It was terrifyingly calm. They dare, she hissed. On holy ground. The first assassin landed. He was huge, swinging a shock baton aimed at Bea's head. Bee didn't back up. She stepped in. She caught the man's wrist with her left hand, twisted her hips, and drove her right palm into his solar plexus. The impact sounded like a gunshot. The man folded, gasping, and she swept his legs, sending him tumbling off the plateau. 1, Bee counted. 2 more landed, rushing Ash. Ash wasn't a martial artist. He was a scrapper. He scrambled back as a baton sparked inches from his nose. He grabbed a handful of loose gravel and flung it into the lead attacker's goggles. The man flinched. Ash used the momentum, planting his hands on the shrine and vaulting over it, kicking the man in the chest with both feet. It wasn't graceful, but it was heavy. The man stumbled back. The third attacker flanked, aiming a crossbow at Ash's exposed back. Ash, 6 o'clock. Bee shouted, engaged with another baton wielder. Ash couldn't dodge. He braced for the impact. But it didn't come. A blur of yellow intercepted the bolt. Pikachu, using Iron Tail, slapped the projectile out of the air. "Thanks, buddy," Ash yelled. He ducked a punch from the gravel-blinded man, grabbed the attacker's arm, and used the man's own weight to flip him over his hip. It was a sloppy judo throw he'd learned from a gym leader in Sinnoh, but it worked. The man hit the ground hard. Ash didn't stop. He pinned the man's arm, knowing he couldn't win a prolonged grapple. He saw the shock baton on the ground. He grabbed it, jamming the business end into the attacker's tactical vest. The man convulsed and went limp. Ash looked up. Bee was dismantling her opponent. She was a whirlwind of strikes, elbows, knees, open palms. She didn't just hit, she broke. She shattered the man's guard, dislocated his shoulder, and finished him with a roundhouse kick that knocked him unconscious before he hit the ground. Silence returned to the plateau, save for the wind. Ash stood up, panting, dropping the baton. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline dump. "You missed one," Bee said quietly. She wasn't looking at the unconscious men. She was looking at the cliff face. A fifth figure emerged from the shadows of a crevice, the leader. He held a pistol. Not a stun gun. A firearm. "Sloppy," the assassin muttered. He raised the gun, aiming at Bee. The contract said accidents happen on the mountain. Bee was 5 meters away. Too far to strike. Ash was closer. The gun fired. Ash didn't think about politics. He didn't think about the right of sovereignty. He saw the barrel flash, and he moved. He threw himself into the path of the bullet. It felt like being punched by a Macamp. The bullet caught him in the left shoulder, spinning him around. He hit the dirt, a cry of pain tearing from his throat. "Ash!" Bee screamed, a sound of raw, uncharacteristically high panic. The assassin adjusted his aim for a kill shot on the downed king. Bee moved. She covered the 5 meters in a single stride, faster than humanly possible. Her eyes were glowing faintly, pure fighting spirit manifesting as energy. She didn't strike the man. She struck the air in front of him. A shockwave, vacuum wave, blasted from her fist, hitting the assassin like a cannonball. He was launched backward, slamming into the rock wall with a sickening crunch. He slid down, motionless. Bee didn't check on him. She fell to her knees beside Ash. "Idiot," she hissed, her hands hovering over him, terrified to touch. "Stupid, reckless, why did you do that?" Ash gritted his teeth, clutching his shoulder. Blood was seeping through his fingers, dark and warm. "He was aiming at you. I could have dodged." Bee yelled, tearing a strip of fabric from her GI. She pressed it against the wound, applying pressure. "Maybe," Ash gasped, his face gray. "Didn't want to, take the chance." Bee froze. She looked at him. Really looked at him. This wasn't a boy playing hero. This was a man who valued her life above his own, without hesitation. "We need to move," Bee said, her voice shaking slightly. "The scent of blood will draw wild corviknight. There is a cave near the summit. Can you walk?" "Yeah," Ash lied. He tried to stand and stumbled. Bee caught him. She pulled his good arm over her shoulder, wrapping her arm around his waist. She was solid, warm, and incredibly strong. "Lean on me," she commanded. "I have you." The cave was small, dry, and out of the wind. Bee had built a small fire using dry moss and scrub brush. The orange light danced on the cave walls. Ash sat against the rock wall, shirtless. His shoulder was bandaged tightly with the remains of Bea's sleeves and a first aid kit she kept in her rucksack. The bullet had passed through the fleshy part of the deltoid, painful, bloody, but it missed the bone and artery. Bee sat opposite him, watching him. She had been silent for an hour. Does it hurt? She asked finally. Only when I breathe, Ash joked weakly. He petted Pikachu, who was curled up in his lap, looking worried. Bee picked up a stick and poked the fire. You fight like a wild Pokemon, she said. No form. No discipline. You utilize the environment, you fight dirty, and you take unnecessary risks. I fight to win, Ash said. No, Bee looked up, her eyes intense in the firelight. You fight to save. There is a difference. A warrior fights to defeat the opponent. You fought to protect me. That is why you took the hit. You're part of the team, Bee, Ash said softly. I don't let my team get hurt. Bee looked at the bandages on his shoulder. She stood up and moved closer, sitting next to him. The distance between them, usually a mile of social awkwardness, had vanished. I judged you, Bee admitted, her voice low. When the council announced the right. I thought you were a child. A celebrity trainer who got lucky. I thought I would be shackled to a weakling. She reached out, her fingertips grazing the skin near the bandage. Her hands, usually balled into fists, were calloused but gentle. I was wrong, she whispered. You have the spirit of a master. Not because of your title. But because you do not know how to hesitate. Ash looked at her. In the firelight, the severe lines of her face softened. She looked young, burdened by her own expectations of strength. I'm scared all the time, Bee, Ash confessed. Bee blinked. What? Everyone thinks I'm fearless. But I'm terrified. I'm scared I'm not strong enough to stop what's coming. I'm scared I'm going to fail Gaylor. I'm scared I'm going to fail you. Bee stared at him. The admission hung in the air, heavy and real. Fear is not weakness, Bee said firmly. Fear is the fuel. If you were not afraid, you would be a fool. You are afraid, yet you climb the mountain. Yet you take the bullet. She leaned in closer. Her breath hitched. That is not weakness, Ash. That is the definition of power. She didn't kiss him. It wasn't that kind of moment yet. Instead, she took his hand, the one that wasn't holding Pikachu, and interlaced her fingers with his. Her grip was firm, grounding. Rest, Monarch, she said softly. I will take the first watch. Nothing will touch you tonight. Ash squeezed her hand back. I trust you. He closed his eyes. For the first time since the coronation, he slept without nightmares. Dawn broke over Gaylor like a shattered egg, spilling gold and violet across the horizon. Ash and Bee stood at the summit of Stowonside. The wind here was gentle, almost reverent. Below them, the world stretched out, the wild area, the distant spires of Hammerlock, the glimmering sea of Holbury. Ash's arm was in a makeshift sling, but he stood tall. We made it, Ash said. Bee stood beside him. She looked different. The tension that usually held her shoulders up had dissipated. She looked at Ash, then out at the kingdom. The rite is complete, Bee said formally. By the old laws, we have walked the path. You have proven your body is worthy of the crown. I don't care about the laws, Ash said. He turned to her. I'm glad I did it with you. Bee smiled. It was a small, private thing, just for him. As am I. Her Rotom phone buzzed, breaking the moment. Bee frowned, pulling it out. It's Sonia, she said. Her expression hardened instantly. Ash, you need to see this. Ash looked at the screen. It was an encrypted message. Ash. B.A. Get back to Wyndon. I cracked the chip. The Syndicate isn't just building robots. They found it. They found the darkest day's heart. Ash felt the blood run cold in his veins. The heart? Ash asked. I thought Eternatus was sealed. It is, Bee read, her voice tight. But apparently, it left something behind. A fragment. And they're going to use it to power the cannon. Ash looked out at the horizon. The piece of the sunrise felt like a lie now. We have to go, Ash said, the warrior's edge returning to his voice. We need to get to the crown tundra before they wake it up. Your shoulder. Be started. It works, Ash flexed his hand, wincing but ignoring the pain. And besides, I've got a bodyguard now, right? Bee looked at him, her eyes fierce. She touched the black belt at her waist. You have a queen, she corrected. And heaven help anyone who tries to shoot you again. They turned back toward the stairs. The descent would be faster. The pilgrimage was over. The war was just beginning. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5, Whispers in the Ruins. The Crown Tundra was not a place where life thrived, it was a place where life survived. A whiteout blizzard screamed across the frozen landscape, reducing visibility to less than a meter. To the naked eye, the endless expanse of ice was empty. But to the thermal sensors of the automated sentry turrets mounted on the ridge, the world was a grid of cold data. 4 figures moved through the storm, cloaked in thermal-dampening ponchos that Sonia had fabricated in the lab 3 hours prior. Heart rate check, Sonia's voice crackled over the comms, barely audible over the wind. Ash, your vitals are spiking. Your shoulder. Ash Ketchum gritted his teeth, adjusting the strap of his heavy winter pack so it wouldn't dig into the fresh bullet wound. I'm fine, Sonia. Just cold. Liar, BEA's voice cut in, sharp and clear. She was taking point, moving through the knee-deep snow with the terrifying efficiency of a sneasel. He is compensating by shifting his weight to his right leg. He is in pain. Focus, Ash ordered, his voice low. We're approaching the coordinates. Sonia, are you sure this is the place? Sonia stopped. She pulled a bulky scanner from her coat, shielding the screen from the driving snow. The data from the type, null chip had a geotag. It pointed to the split deciduous ruins. But, the energy readings are wrong. Wrong how? Nessa asked. She brought up the rear, her movement hampered by the snow. As a water specialist, this dry, biting cold was her nightmare. It's too quiet, Sonia murmured. There's a massive power draw underneath us, enough to light up Winden, but on the surface? Zero leakage. They've shielded the entire facility with lead and dampening fields. Which means we can't blast our way in, Ash surmised. If we trip the alarms, they'll purge the data before we even get to the door. Exactly, Sonia said. She looked at Ash, her eyes wide behind her snow goggles. This isn't a gym battle, Ash. No thunderbolts. No shouting. We have to be ghosts. Ash nodded. He looked at the looming silhouette of the ancient ruins ahead. Lead the way, Professor. You're the MVP on this one. The entrance wasn't a door. It was a puzzle. Inside the crumbling stone temple of the Regi Titans, the wind died down, replaced by a heavy, stagnant silence. The floor was etched with braille-like carvings, centuries old. It's a pressure plate mechanism, Sonia whispered, kneeling on the frozen stone. She tapped her gloved fingers against the carvings. But it's been modified. Look. She pointed to a hairline fracture in the stone. A laser grid, invisible to the naked eye but revealed by her scanner's UV filter, crisscrossed the entryway. If we break the beam, the facility goes into lockdown, Sonia explained. She pulled a small device from her pocket, a jammer. I can loop the signal, but I need access to the emitter. It's up there. She pointed to a stone gargoyle perched 20 feet up on the wall, near the vaulted ceiling. I can climb it, Bee said, stepping forward. No, Ash stopped her, putting a hand on her arm. The stone is old. If it crumbles under your weight, the noise alerts them. He looked at Pikachu, who was shivering inside his jacket. Buddy, Think you can handle a precision job? Pikachu nodded, eyes determined. Sonia, give him the jammer. Sonia attached the small magnetic disc to Pikachu's harness. Pikachu, you need to place this directly on the gargoyle's eye. Do not touch the lasers. Ash crouched down. Use quick attack for speed, but stick the landing with iron tail to grip the stone without slipping. Silent. Pikachu vanished. He was a yellow blur, bouncing off the walls with barely a sound. He reached the gargoyle, flipped in midair, and planted his metallic tail into the stone crevice, hanging upside down. He slapped the jammer onto the stone eye. The red laser grid flickered and died. We're in, Sonia let out a breath she'd been holding. Go. Fast. They slipped through a hidden panel in the floor that slid open with a pneumatic hiss. The transition was jarring. One moment, they were in an ancient ruin, the next, they were standing on a metal catwalk overlooking a sprawling, high-tech underground facility. The air smelled of antiseptic and ozone. Below them, scientists in white coats moved like ants, flanked by armed guards and Pokémon. But the Pokémon were wrong. A Macamp walked by, carrying heavy crates. Its eyes were glazed over, a metallic headset drilled directly into its temples. A Rillaboom stood guard, but its drum was gone, replaced by a heavy plasma cannon mounted to its chest. They're lobotomized, Bee whispered, her voice trembling with a rare fury. She gripped the railing, the metal groaning under her strength. They've stripped their wills. Don't look, Ash said, though he couldn't tear his own eyes away. His aura was screaming. The pain in this room was a physical weight. We need to find the central server. Sonia. Sonia was already typing on her wrist computer, her face pale. Server room is Sector 4. But Ash, the power source. It's in the central chamber. She pointed to the center of the facility. A massive glass cylinder dominated the room, surrounded by thick cables. Inside the cylinder, suspended in a stasis field, was a pulsating shard of jagged crystal. It glowed with a malevolent, violet light. The heart, Ash whispered. It's part of Eternatus, Sonia confirmed, her voice shaking. If they wake that up, it won't just be a cannon. It'll trigger a second darkest day. We destroy it, Nessa said, reaching for a pokeball. No, Sonia hissed. If you destabilize that energy here, we vaporize the crown tundra. We have to shut down the containment field sequence first. We need the codes from the mainframe. Then we split up, Ash decided. Nessa, you create a diversion. Quietly at first, then loud. Draw the guards away from Sector 4. Sonia and I will get the data. Understood, B said. She looked at Ash. Do not get shot again. I'll try. Ash and Sonia moved through the ventilation shafts. It was a tight squeeze. Ash crawled ahead, wincing every time he put weight on his left arm. Sonia crawled behind him. You're bleeding through the bandage, Sonia whispered. I'm fine. Stop saying you're fine. Sonia snapped, her whisper harsh in the echoey metal tube. You're hurt, Ash. You're the monarch, not an immortal. It's okay to be in pain. Ash stopped. He looked back at her over his shoulder. In the dim light of the vent, Sonia looked terrified. Not for herself, but for the situation. For him. If I stop, Ash said softly, I start thinking about how many Pokémon down there are suffering. And if I start thinking about that, I'm going to lose control. So I keep moving. Sonia stared at him. She saw the rage burning behind his brown eyes, a controlled, nuclear fire. She realized then that Ash's stupidity was often just a dam holding back a flood of empathy that would drown anyone else. Okay, Sonia softened. Keep moving. But let me hack the door. They dropped down into a server room. It was cool and dark, illuminated only by the blinking lights of massive data towers. Sonia rushed to the main console. Her fingers flew across the holographic keyboard. "Encryption is level 10, she muttered. Macro Cosmos Standard. Wait, this coding style." She froze. "What is it?" Ash asked, watching the door, Lucario's pokeball in hand. "This code," Sonia's voice trembled. "It uses a syntax structure that Gran invented. Only 3 people knew it. Gran, me, and him. Him." Dr. Verglass, a smooth voice filled the room. Ash spun around. No one was there. The voice came from the main screen. A video feed flickered to life. A man sat in a high-backed chair. He looked aggressively ordinary, thin, bespectacled, with graying hair and a kind smile that didn't reach his eyes. He wore a lab coat that was pristine white. "Hello, Sonia," the man on the screen said. "I see you've inherited Magnolia's bad habit of meddling." Verglass, Sonia spat the name. "You were Gran's assistant. You helped her research Dynamax energy to help Pokemon. How could you build this? Help?" Verglass chuckled. It was a dry, rattling sound. Magnolia was a fool. She believed the bond between human and Pokemon was a partnership. "I proved it is a parasite." He tapped a key on his desk. The screen split, showing live footage of the facility floor. It zoomed in on the lobotomized Macamp. "Look at them, Sonia. Efficient. Painless. Compliant. No chaotic aura. No unpredictable outbursts. Pure biology, utilized for progress. We don't need partners. We need tools. They have souls." Ash shouted, stepping into the frame. Verglass looked at Ash. He didn't look impressed. He looked disappointed. "Ah. The new king. The boy who talks to the monsters." Verglass leaned forward. "You are the disease, Mr. Ketchum. You and your aura. You enslave these creatures with friendship, binding their potential to your emotional whims. I am freeing them. You call that freedom?" Ash pointed at the screen. "Turning them into zombies? I call it order," Verglass replied. "And soon, with the anti-aura cannon, I will sever the bond across all of Galar. Every pokeball will fail. Every connection will snap. Man and beast will be separate once more. And I will be the architect of the new world." "Sonia," Ash didn't look away from the screen. "Tell me you're getting this." "I'm copying everything," Sonia whispered, her eyes streaming with tears as she typed furiously. "The schematics, the location of his main hideout, the frequency to jam the cannon. I have it." "Good," Ash said. "Security to Sector 4, Verglass said calmly. "Liquidate the intruders." The screen went black. "Ash." Sonia pulled the drive. "We have the data." But he triggered the alarm. Red lights began to flash. Sirens wailed. The heavy steel door to the server room shuddered as something massive rammed it from the outside. Bang! "They're cutting through." Ash yelled. "Is there another exit?" "No." Sonia panicked, looking around. "We're boxed in." Ash looked at the door. Sparks were flying as a plasma cutter sliced through the lock. He looked at Sonia. She was clutching the drive to her chest, looking at him for an answer. She wasn't a fighter. If a battle broke out here, in this confined space, she would get hurt. "Sonia," Ash said, his voice completely calm. "Do you trust me?" "Yes," she sobbed. "Return your Pokemon. All of them." "What?" "Do it." Sonia recalled her Yamper. Ash clipped his own Pokeballs to his belt. He grabbed a heavy server tower and dragged it in front of a ventilation grate on the floor. "We're not going out," Ash said. We're going down. Down. That's the coolant drainage. It exits onto the side of the cliff. It's a 100-foot drop. The door blew open. Smoke filled the room. Through the haze, a squad of robotic soldiers marched in, weapons raised. Hold on. Ash grabbed Sonia around the waist. Ash, wait. Ash summoned his aura. Not a shield this time. A burst. He stomped on the floor grate, shattering the bolts. He jumped into the darkness, pulling Sonia with him. They fell. The slide was a nightmare of icy water and slick metal. They shot out of the drainage pipe on the side of the mountain, plummeting into the blizzard. For a second, they were weightless. The wind roared. Dragonite. Ash screamed. In midair, Ash threw a ball. The dragon Pokemon materialized instantly, roaring against the storm. It swooped down, catching Ash and Sonia just before they hit the jagged rocks of the ravine. Dragonite banked hard, struggling against the gale force winds, and landed heavily on a snow-covered ledge a mile away from the facility. Ash rolled off, coughing up freezing water. He scrambled over to Sonia. Sonia. Are you hurt? Sonia was lying in the snow, staring up at the gray sky. She was shivering violently, but she held the data drive in a death grip. I have it, she whispered. I have, the proof. Then, she crumbled. She curled into a ball, sobbing. It wasn't the cold. It was the betrayal. The man she had looked up to, the man who had worked alongside her grandmother, was a monster. The science she loved had been twisted into torture. He used Gran's work, she choked out. He used my work. The equations. I wrote those equations for the energy transfer. I helped him build it, Ash. I didn't know, but I helped him. Ash looked at her. He saw the guilt eating her alive. He didn't offer a platitude. He didn't tell her it wasn't her fault. He sat down in the snow next to her and pulled her into his arms. He wrapped his cloak around both of them, creating a small pocket of warmth in the freezing world. Sonia, look at me. She looked up, eyes red and swollen. He built a gun, Ash said firmly. You built the shield. You just stole his entire plan. You just saved every Pokemon in Galar. I'm not strong like you, Sonia wept into his chest. I can't fight. I froze in there. Ash held her tighter, resting his chin on her head. You hacked a level 10 encryption in under 2 minutes while a madman was threatening you, Ash said. I can punch things, Sonia. I can tackle robots. But I couldn't do what you did. I would have failed without you. He pulled back slightly, looking her in the eye. You are the wisdom of Galar. And right now, your brain is the most dangerous weapon we have. So don't you dare say you aren't strong. Sonia sniffed, wiping her nose on his cloak. She looked at the drive in her hand. Then she looked at Ash. For the first time, she didn't see a kid. She didn't see a political figurehead. She saw a partner who saw her. Not the professor's granddaughter. Her. We need to find Nessa and B, Sonia said, her voice shaky but steadying. Dragonite says they're approaching, Ash said, petting the dragon's snout. They took the snowmobiles. They're fine. Sonia nodded. She leaned her head against Ash's good shoulder. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a bone-deep exhaustion. Ash? Yeah. Thank you. Anytime. No, Sonia closed her eyes. Thank you for not letting me fall. Ash smiled, watching the snow fall around them. That's the job description, he murmured. In the distance, the lights of the split deciduous ruins flickered and died. The facility was dark. But in Ash's pocket, the data drive felt warm. They had the map. They had the target. And for the first time, the Monarch Circle wasn't just a defensive alliance. It was a hunting party. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6, The Summit of Champions. The Great Hall of the Lumiose Conference Center was a cathedral of glass and steel, suspended high above the glittering streets of the Kalos capital. Usually, it was a place of sterile diplomacy. Tonight, it felt like a gladiatorial pit. Ash Ketchum stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, adjusting the collar of his dress uniform. It was the third time he'd worn it, and it still felt like a costume. "Stop fidgeting," Nessa whispered, stepping up beside him. She looked devastating in a gown of midnight blue silk that seemed to flow like water, but her eyes were scanning the room with the predatory focus of a Gyarados. "They're watching you." "I know," Ash murmured. "I can feel them." He didn't mean the press, though the cameras were flashing like strobe lights behind the security cordon. He meant the people in the center of the room. The champions. Cynthia sat on a velvet sofa, sipping tea with terrified elegance. Stephen Stone was examining a piece of abstract art on the wall, though his reflection was watching the door. Diantha, the host, was charming a group of foreign dignitaries. And standing in the center, arms crossed, wearing a cape that looked less like a costume and more like a warning, was Lance. "They aren't here to celebrate your coronation, Ash," Sonia said quietly, checking her data pad. She wore a sharp white suit, looking every bit the professor, though her hands trembled slightly. "The International League is panicked. A coup in Galar? A militarized monarch? They think you're a liability." "Then let's go introduce ourselves," Ash said. He walked into the room. He didn't walk like the kid who had scrambled through the Kalos wilderness years ago. He walked with the heavy, grounded stride of someone who had carried a slab of concrete across the ocean floor. The conversation in the room died. Diantha broke the silence, gliding over with a practiced smile. "Monarch Ash. Welcome back to Kalos. It has been quite a year for you." "Diantha," Ash nodded respectfully. "Thank you for hosting us." Lance turned. The Dragon Master's expression was hard, his eyes narrowing as he took in Ash's entourage, the three women who flanked him like a Praetorian guard. "We expected the world champion," Lance said, his voice deep and echoing. "Instead, we get the king of Galar and his court." Bee stiffened, her jaw setting. Nessa stepped forward, her heels clicking sharp on the marble. "We are his advisors, Lance," Nessa said coldly. "And considering we just stopped a terror attack that nearly poisoned an ocean, I'd suggest you watch your tone." Lance didn't blink. "I read the reports. Vigilante justice. Unauthorized military action. And rumors of ancient laws being used to bypass the democratic process. The League was founded to prevent exactly this kind of feudalism." He walked up to Ash, towering over him. "You're a great trainer, Ash. Maybe the best," Lance said. "But you are not a ruler. You are a kid playing with a loaded gun. And the rest of the world is nervous." Ash met Lance's gaze. He didn't back down. He didn't get angry. "I didn't ask for the crown, Lance," Ash said calmly. "But I have it. And there's a threat growing in the dark that doesn't care about your League regulations. I'm here to warn you, not to ask for permission." "A threat?" Stephen Stone joined them, his voice smooth but serious. "The Null Syndicate? We've heard the whispers. But surely the local police, the police can't stop them," Sonia interrupted, stepping up. She projected a hologram from her wrist, the schematic of the anti-aura cannon. "They have type, null technology. They have corrupted legendary energy. They aren't criminals, they're an army." Cynthia stood up, walking over. "If this is true, why hasn't the Galar Council requested formal aid?" "Because the council is compromised," Ash said bluntly. "And because if we bring in foreign armies, we trigger a civil war." Lance scoffed. "Convenient. You consolidate power, claim a shadow enemy, and demand we trust you. It's a classic playbook, Ash. I expected better. Ash felt a spark of irritation. Not at Lance's skepticism, that was warranted, but at the time being wasted. You want to test me? Ash asked, his voice dropping an octave. You want to know if I'm fit to lead? I want to know if the Ash Ketchum who saved the world is still in there, Lance challenged. Or if he's been replaced by a politician. He gestured to the glass doors leading to the arena balcony. A spar. 1-on-1. No politics. Just us. Ash looked at B. She nodded imperceptibly. Show them. Fine, Ash said. Let's go. The exhibition match was impromptu, but within 10 minutes, the entire world was watching. The feeds from the summit were broadcasting live to every region. The battlefield was a standard regulation pitch, hovering on a gravity platform. The wind was high. Lance stood on the far side, his cape billowing. He released his Dragonite. The beast roared, a sound that shook the glass windows of the tower. Ash stepped forward. He didn't reach for a pokeball. Pikachu, Ash said. Pikachu leaped from his shoulder, landing on the field. Sparks flew from his cheeks, scorching the turf. Begin. Diantha announced from the sidelines. Dragonite, Hyper Beam. Lance ordered immediately. It was a statement. No warm-up. Just raw, destructive power. The orange beam tore across the field, melting the grass. Iron Tail, into the ground. Ash commanded. Pikachu didn't dodge. He slammed his tail into the concrete field, ripping up a massive slab of debris. The hyper beam hit the slab, exploding into dust and smoke. Thunderbolt, spread pattern. Pikachu leaped through the smoke, spinning. He didn't fire one bolt, he fired a dozen, creating a cage of electricity around the dragon. Fast, Lance muttered. Dragon Dance, break through. Dragonite spun, deflecting the lightning, its speed rising. It blurred, closing the distance in a heartbeat. Dragon Claw. Catch it, Ash said. The crowd gasped. Pikachu didn't dodge. He caught the massive glowing claw with his iron tail, his tiny body holding back the dragon's weight. The ground beneath him cracked. You fight with anger, Lance shouted across the field. You fight like you have something to prove. I fight because I have something to lose. Ash yelled back. Use the momentum. Flip. Pikachu twisted, using Dragonite's force to swing himself over the dragon's head. Volt Tackle. Pikachu turned into a golden comet, slamming into Dragonite's back. The dragon crashed into the turf, skidding 20 meters. Lance's eyes widened. That wasn't just power. That was tactical ruthlessness. You've changed, Ash, Lance called out. You used to fight for the fun of it. The fun ended when they put a target on my friends, Ash said, his eyes glowing faintly blue as his aura synchronized with Pikachu. Dragonite, get up. Lance roared. But before the battle could continue, the stadium lights flickered. A low, resonant hum filled the air. The gravity platform shuddered. What is that? Cynthia asked from the VIP box, standing up. Sonia, watching her tablet, screamed. Ash. Get off the field. The energy barriers surrounding the pitch, designed to protect the crowd from stray attacks, suddenly shifted color. They turned from a translucent blue to a violent, opaque crimson. Containment field active, a mechanical voice boomed over the PA. Targets acquired, champion-level assets. It's a trap. Steven Stone shouted, releasing his Metagross. Ash ran toward the edge of the barrier, but it buzzed with malicious energy. He touched it, and a bolt of black lightning threw him backward. Ash. Nessa screamed, running to the glass of the VIP box. Don't touch it. Sonia warned. It's an inverted polarity field. It keeps us in, and it dampens Pokeball frequencies. Inside the barrier, Lance and Ash were trapped. High above, stealth drones decloaked. They weren't filming. They were carrying capture nets woven from conductive energy cables. The Syndicate, Ash hissed, standing up and dusting himself off. They knew we'd be here. They want the dragons, Lance realized, looking at his Dragonite and Ash's Pikachu. They want the strongest DNA. Citizens of the world, Dr. Verglass's voice cut through the stadium speakers, calm and terrifying. You worship these champions like gods. Watch how easily your gods fall when stripped of their toys. For massive mechanical constructs dropped from the drones onto the field. They were sleek, humanoid machines, armed with shock whips. Lance, Ash said, his voice changing. The competitive edge was gone. The commander was here. Recall Dragonite. The barrier blocks recall beams, but if you keep him close, we can defend. I can handle, do as I say. Ash barked. It wasn't a request. It was an order given with the weight of a king. Lance hesitated, then nodded. Dragonite, return to guard position. Cynthia. Steven. Ash shouted, looking up at the VIP box. They're going to breach the box to get to you. Don't rely on your aces. Use utility. Steven, jam the drone signals. Cynthia, cut the power to the external grid. Up in the box, the champions were stunned for a microsecond. Then, they moved. Ash had assessed the situation faster than any of them. You heard him. Steven yelled, his Metagross smashing the glass to get to the drone controls. On the field, the machines attacked. Lance's Dragonite blasted one with a flamethrower, but the machine absorbed the fire, its chest glowing hot. Thermal absorption, Ash noted. Pikachu, physical attacks only. Aim for the joints. Ash didn't stand back. He ran with Pikachu. Ash, you're human. Lance yelled. Stay back. Watch out. Ash shoved Lance aside as a shock whip cracked the air where the Dragon Master had been standing. Ash rolled, picking up a piece of debris from the earlier hyper beam. He threw it with perfect accuracy, jamming it into the knee joint of the approaching mech. The machine stumbled. Iron Tail. Pikachu decapitated the machine in one strike. They adapt to types, Ash explained, breathing hard. You have to fight them like puzzles, not Pokemon. Lance stared at him. He saw the bandage on Ash's shoulder bleed through his uniform. He saw the total lack of fear. He realized then that Ash wasn't playing soldier. He was a soldier. Right, Lance grunted, a newfound respect sharpening his voice. Dragonite, Dragon Claw. Aim for the hydraulics. Meanwhile, in the VIP box, chaos had erupted. Mercenaries had breached the rear doors. B was a blur of violence. She had engaged 3 men at once, her movements so fast she seemed to have extra limbs. Nessa, get behind me. B ordered. I'm not helpless. Nessa retorted. She grabbed a champagne bottle from a table, smashed it, and hurled it at a mercenary raising a rifle. It hit him square in the face. Sonia, the barrier. Nessa yelled. Can you drop it? I'm trying. Sonia was huddled under a table, hacking the stadium network. The code is mutating. It's learning. On the field, the situation was getting worse. The red barrier was shrinking, forcing Ash and Lance closer to the center. Ash. Nessa's voice rang out over the comms system. There's a sniper drone. 12 o'clock high. It's locking onto you. Ash looked up. A sleek black drone hovered directly above, a glowing barrel aimed not at him, but at Pikachu. Pikachu, dodge. No, Lance shouted. It's a wide beam. It'll hit everything. Ash made a split-second decision. He couldn't dodge. He couldn't block it with a move. He closed his eyes. Lucario, he projected. I need the aura. Inside his pokeball on Ash's belt, Lucario roared. Ash threw his hands up. A massive sphere of blue energy didn't form from a Pokémon, it formed from Ash. It exploded outward from his body, a dome of pure aura. The sniper beam hit the blue dome and scattered. The stadium went silent. The crowd, the champions, the mercenaries, everyone froze. Ash Ketchum was holding back a high-tech laser with his bare hands. Sonia. Now. Ash roared, the strain evident in his voice. Veins bulged on his neck. Got it. Sonia hit enter. The red barrier shattered like glass. Steven. Cynthia. Diantha. All-out attack. Ash commanded. The champions didn't hesitate. Garchomp, Draco Meteor. Metagross, Flash Cannon. Gardevoir, Moon Blast. Dragonite, Hyper Beam. And from the center of the storm, Pikachu, 10 million volt Thunderbolt. The combined might of 5 champions hit the Syndicate Squadron. The sky turned white. The explosion was less of a sound and more of an atmospheric reset. When the light faded, the drones were scrap metal. The mercenaries were retreating, their extraction ships fleeing into the clouds. Ash stood in the center of the scorched field. His uniform was tattered. He swayed, his vision blurring. The aura output had been massive. He felt his knees buckle. He didn't hit the ground. Lance caught him. The Dragon Master held the young king up, supporting his weight. Steady, Monarch, Lance said quietly. Ash blinked, looking up at the man who had challenged him 20 minutes ago. Did we save the aces? Ash rasped. We did, Lance said. He looked up at the VIP box, where B, Nessa, and Sonia were safe, looking down with relief. Lance turned Ash around to face the cameras. Look, Lance whispered. The crowd wasn't cheering wildly. They were clapping. A slow, rhythmic, thunderous applause. It was the sound of respect. Steven, Cynthia, and Diantha walked onto the field. They didn't stand in front of Ash. They stood beside him. You have a strange way of conducting diplomacy, Ash, Cynthia said, a small smile playing on her lips. But effective. The barrier tech, Steven noted, picking up a piece of the red glass. This is dangerous. If they can trap us. Then we hunt them down before they try again, Ash said, finding his footing. He pulled away from Lance, standing on his own. Nessa, B, and Sonia ran onto the field. Protocol be damned. Nessa reached him first, checking him for new injuries. You used the aura again. You promised you'd be careful. I had to cover Pikachu, Ash defended. B stopped in front of him. She looked at the destroyed mechs, then at Ash. She bowed. Deeply. The command was sound, B said. Sonia was typing frantically on her phone. Ash, the feed of you using the aura shield. It's got 500 million views in 3 minutes. The headline isn't Warlord anymore. She turned the screen to him. The Guardian King. Ash sighed, rubbing his temples. Great. More titles. Lance stepped forward, extending a hand. This time, there was no condescension. You are right, Ash, Lance said loud enough for the microphones to catch. Galar faces a threat we did not understand. And it seems Galar has the only leader crazy enough to fight it. Ash took the hand. Does this mean the League backs off? It means, Lance grinned, that the League is offering an alliance. If you need us, call. Ash looked at his friends, his circle. Then he looked at the champions. We'll need everyone, Ash said grimly. Because Verglass wasn't trying to win today. He was testing the waters. He looked at the sky where the ships had vanished. He knows we can fight back now. Next time, he won't make mistakes. Ash turned to his team. We're going home. We have a war to finish. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7, The shadow of Eternatus. The tracking signal on the main screen of the Royal Transport bloomed like a drop of ink in water. We found him, Sonia said, her voice tight. She sat hunched over the console, the blue light reflecting off her glasses. Dr. Verglass. He's not hiding anymore. The energy signature of the heart is unshielded. Ash stood behind the pilot's seat, staring out the viewport at the clouds rushing by. Where? He's hovering over Bologna, Sonia replied, zooming in on the map. But Ash, the energy readings are spiking. It's not a propulsion system. It's a weapon charging sequence. Bologna? Nessa stood up, her face pale. That's a valley town. It's a bowl. If he fires a heavy weapon there, the gas from the Glimwood mushrooms will ignite. It'll be a firestorm. Get us there, Ash ordered Leon, who was piloting. Max speed. The transport banked hard, the engines screaming as they pushed past safety limits. Within minutes, the dense, ancient forest of Glimwood tangle came into view. But the usual ethereal glow of the bioluminescent mushrooms was overpowered by a sickly, violet light pulsing from the sky. A massive airship, shaped like a jagged obsidian splinter, hung over the town. Incoming transmission, Sonia announced. It's him. Verglass's face appeared on the dashboard holoemitter. He looked calm, almost bored, adjusting his spectacles. Monarch, Verglass greeted. You are punctual. Step away from the town, Verglass, Ash said, his voice low and dangerous. There are civilians down there. I am aware, Verglass smiled. That is the variable of the experiment. He pressed a key on his console. I have extracted a sample of the darkest day's energy, Verglass explained, as if giving a lecture. I have injected it into a biological host. A legendary bird of Galar, specifically. The creature's will was resistant. So I broke it. Below the airship, a bay door hissed open. A cage dropped, plummeting toward the forest canopy. This is your choice, Ash Ketchum, Verglass continued. My ship is leaving now. I am traveling to the energy plant to initiate the final phase of my plan. If you chase me, you can stop the war today. You can end the syndicate. The cage smashed into the center of Bologna. A screech tore through the air, a sound that was not animal, but digital and distorted, filled with agony. A pillar of black and red flame erupted from the town square. But if you chase me, Verglass finished softly, Bologna burns. The creature, Molters, is unstable. It will explode in approximately 10 minutes, leveling the forest. A king must make hard choices. The few for the many. What will it be? The transmission cut. The obsidian ship's engines flared, turning away from the town, accelerating toward the horizon. Ash looked at the retreating ship. Then he looked down at the smoke rising from the trees. We go after the ship, Leon said instantly, his hands gripping the yoke. Ash, listen to me. If he gets to the energy plant with the heart, he enslaves every Pokemon in Galar. Thousands will die. We have to cut the head off the snake. Leon's right, Sonia said, though her voice shook. Strategically, Bologna is a tragedy. But the energy plant is the end of the world. Ash was silent. He looked at the fire below. He could see the tiny shapes of people fleeing. He could feel the terror rising from the town like heat, a wave of panic that hit his aura senses like a physical blow. Nessa? B? Ash asked. Nessa looked away, biting her lip until it bled. If we stop Verglass, we save everyone. Including my gym. Including the future. B closed her eyes. In war, you sacrifice the limb to save the body. Chase the ship, monarch. They were right. Every logical, tactical, and political instinct said to chase the villain. It was the king choice. Ash unbuckled his safety harness. Open the hatch, Ash said. The command hung in the air, heavy and absolute. Ash? Sonia whispered. What are you doing? A king who sacrifices his people for victory isn't a king, Ash said, walking to the rear of the transport. He's just another politician. You can't save them and catch him. Leon shouted, turning in his seat. You're throwing away the war. Then I'll fight the war tomorrow, Ash said. He grabbed his cap, turning it backward. His eyes were burning with a fierce, terrifying clarity. Leon, take the team. Chase Verglass. Shoot him down. Ash, no. Nessa ran toward him, grabbing his arm. That thing down there. I can feel it from here. It's corrupted. It's radioactive with Eternatus energy. You can't fight it alone. I'm not alone, Ash said, placing his hand over hers for a brief second. I have my team. He looked at the three women, Sonia, Nessa, B. Go get the bad guy, Ash smiled. It was the same reckless, confident smile he had given them in the garage, but there was something sad behind it this time. I'll handle the fire. He hit the manual release. The wind roared into the cabin. Ash. B screamed, reaching out. Ash jumped. He fell through the smoke, the wind whipping his clothes. He didn't release a flying type. He plummeted like a stone until he was 50 feet above the town square. Lucario. Ash threw the ball. The aura Pokemon materialized, catching Ash in mid-air, using his own aura to cushion their impact. They landed in the center of Bologna, cracking the cobblestones. The heat was unbearable. The famous giant mushrooms of the town were burning, casting eerie, dancing shadows. And in the center of the inferno stood the Galarian molters. It was a nightmare. The sleek, black and red bird was convulsing. Veins of violet poison pulsed under its feathers. It wasn't attacking, it was thrashing, firing beams of corrupted energy at random, screaming in pain. It's hurting, Ash whispered, shielding his eyes from the heat. It's not evil. It's sick. A beam of dark energy swept toward a group of children cowering near the Pokemon Center. Pikachu, Thunderbolt. Intercept. Pikachu leaped from Ash's shoulder, a golden streak intercepting the black beam. The collision caused an explosion that knocked Ash back, but the children were safe. Get out of here. Ash screamed at the civilians. Run to the forest edge. The molters locked eyes with Ash. It sensed the aura, the only pure thing in a world of pain. It shrieked in dove. Surfetched, brutal swing. Dracovish, water gun. Jengar, will-o-wisp. Ash released his entire team. They formed a defensive perimeter around him. We don't want to hurt it. Ash yelled over the roar of the fire. We have to contain it. Lucario, help me connect to it. Ash closed his eyes, extending his hands. He ignored the heat. He ignored the smoke filling his lungs. He reached out with his mind, trying to touch the mind of the legendary bird. Pain. Burning. Endless noise. The psychic backlash hit Ash like a hammer. He fell to his knees, blood trickling from his nose. The corruption in the molters was fueled by the darkest energy in the universe. It was anti-life. Ash. He looked up. The transport hadn't left. Leon's Charizard swooped down, blasting a stream of fire to deflect a wing attack from the molters. I gave you an order. Ash shouted at the sky. B jumped from Charizard's back, landing beside Ash in a roll. Nessa and Sonia followed, sliding down ropes. We don't take orders we don't like, B grunted, sliding into a combat stance. And we don't leave our king. Verglass got away, Sonia said, pulling out a medical scanner. Leon is chasing him. We're here to help you. Ash looked at them. He wanted to yell at them for risking the mission. But the relief that washed over him was overwhelming. Sonia, analyze the corruption. Ash commanded, getting back to his feet. Nessa, water types on the fires. B, keep the molters on the ground. On it. The battle for Bologna was chaotic. Nessa's dreadnought and Milotic fought a war against the flames, creating a tunnel of steam for civilians to escape. B and her Macamp engaged the legendary bird physically, grappling with its wings to keep it from taking flight and spreading the radiation. Ash. Sonia screamed over the comms. It's going critical. The Eternatus energy is reacting with the bird's core. It's going to self-destruct. The blast radius will be 10 miles. How do we stop it? Ash yelled, ducking under a swath of black fire. We can't. Sonia cried, looking at her tablet in horror. There's too much energy. It has to go somewhere. Ash looked at the town. He looked at the forest. He looked at his friends. It has to go somewhere. He looked at Lucario. The jackal Pokemon looked back, sensing Ash's intent. Lucario shook his head, a silent plea. No, Master. It is too much. We have to, Ash projected. Or everyone dies. Ash recalled his other Pokemon. He walked toward the thrashing molters. Ash, get back. Nessa yelled, blasting water at the bird's feet. What are you doing? Sonia said the energy needs a conduit, Ash said, his voice strangely calm. I'm the conduit. No. B realized what he meant. She lunged for him, but Lucario stepped in her way, creating a barrier of bone rush energy. Lucario was crying, but he held the line. Lucario, synchronize, Ash whispered. Ash raised his hands. The blue aura flared, but this time it changed. It turned white, blinding, pure white. He didn't push the energy out. He pulled it in. Come here. Ash roared at the molters. The legendary bird shrieked. It felt the vacuum. The violet corruption flowing through its veins was being drawn out, magnetized by Ash's soul. Streams of dark, purple lightning ripped from the molters and struck Ash's chest. Ash arched his back, a scream tearing from his throat that silenced the fire. Ash. Sonia, Nessa, and B screamed in unison. The pain was infinite. It felt like his blood was turning to acid. It felt like his memories were being burned away. But he held on. He anchored himself to the ground. Take it, he thought. Take it all. The molters began to shrink, the black flames fading, revealing its natural pink and black plumage. The madness left its eyes. It collapsed, unconscious but alive, purified. But Ash was glowing violet. The energy of the darkest day was raging inside a human body. He turned to look at the girls. His eyes were entirely black. His skin was cracking, glowing with purple fissures. Run, Ash rasped. Its voice sounded like glass grinding together. No. Nessa ran through the steam. She grabbed him. Don't touch me. Ash tried to pull away, but he was too weak. Nessa hugged him. She didn't care about the radiation. She wrapped her arms around his burning body. I'm not letting go, she sobbed. B grabbed his other side, her hands blistering from the heat of his skin. We stand together, Monarch. Sonia threw herself at his legs, hugging him tight. Hold on, Ash. Just hold on. The bond. It wasn't just aura. It was humanity. Ash felt them. The heat, the coolness, the strength. He focused on that feeling. He took the infinite, chaotic energy of Eternatus, and he forced it down, compressing it, locking it away deep in the darkness of his own subconscious. The violet glow faded. Ash stood there for a moment, smoke rising from his clothes. The blackness faded from his eyes, leaving them dull and glazed. He looked at Nessa. "Did we save the town?" he whispered. "Yes," Nessa cried, tears streaming down her face. "You saved them all." "Good," Ash breathed. "That's good." His eyes rolled back. He collapsed forward. They caught him before he hit the ground. The infirmary wing of Winden Palace was silent, save for the rhythmic beeping of the life support machine. Ash lay in the bed, looking smaller than he ever had. Wires were attached to his chest and temples. His skin was pale, almost translucent, the veins showing a faint, lingering discoloration. Sonia stood by the monitor, her face haggard. She hadn't slept in 48 hours. Nessa sat in a chair by the bedside, holding Ash's limp hand. She was staring at his face, waiting for a twitch, a breath, anything. Bee stood by the door, arms crossed, staring at the floor. She looked like a statue of grief. "The radiation is gone," Sonia said softly, her voice breaking the silence. "But, the neural trauma is massive. He short-circuited his own aura network to contain the blast. Will he wake up?" Nessa asked. Her voice was flat, hollow. Sonia hesitated. "I don't know. Physically, he's healing. But his mind, he's in a deep coma. He might be trapped in there." Nessa brought Ash's hand to her lips. She kissed his knuckles, gently, reverently. "He chose us," Nessa whispered. "Verglass told him to choose the mission. He chose the people." "He is a fool," Bee said, her voice trembling. "A glorious, stupid fool." Bee walked over to the bed. She placed a hand on Ash's forehead. "I was trained to follow strength," Bee said softly. "To follow the winner. But this." She looked at his sleeping face. "This is not about winning. I don't care if he never battles again. I just want him to open his eyes." Sonia put down her chart. She walked over, completing the circle around the bed. "We played along with the council," Sonia said. "We accepted the marriage alliance because it was the law. Because it was convenient." She looked at the other two women. "It's not politics anymore. Is it?" Nessa shook her head, tears falling onto the sheets. "No. I love him." The confession hung in the air. Simple. Undeniable. Bee nodded slowly. "He is my heart." Sonia wiped her eyes. "He's my hero." The door opened. Leon walked in. The former champion looked defeated. His arm was in a sling. "Verglass escaped," Leon said quietly. "We shot down his escorts, but he slipped into the storm. He's gone to ground." Leon looked at Ash. "How is he?" "He's fighting," Sonia said. Leon nodded. He looked at the three women surrounding the bed, the fierce protective stance of the water gym leader, the stoic devastation of the fighter, the brilliant mind of the professor. "The council is calling," Leon warned. "They're saying Ash showed weakness. That he let the terrorist escape to save a few peasants. They want to trigger a vote of no confidence while he's incapacitated." Nessa stood up. She let go of Ash's hand, but the warmth remained. She turned to Leon, and the look in her eyes made the unbeatable champion take a step back. It was the look of a tidal wave about to break. "Let them try," Nessa hissed. Bee turned, cracking her knuckles. "If they come for his crown while he sleeps, I will break every bone in the High Council." Sonia adjusted her glasses. Her sorrow was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating rage. "I have the data from the ruins," Sonia said. "I have proof of council members funding Verglass's early research. If they want a political war, I will bury them. They looked at each other. The right of sovereignty had demanded they be pillars to support the king. But the king had fallen. Now, they would be the wall that protected him. You handle the council, Nessa told Leon. We'll handle the syndicate. And we'll handle Ash. Leon looked at them. He saw the shift. They weren't just allies. They were a family. And they were terrifying. Understood, Leon said, backing out of the room. Long live the king. As the door clicked shut, the three women turned back to Ash. Sleep, Ash, Nessa whispered, smoothing his hair. Rest. We'll take the watch from here. Outside the window, the rain began to fall over Gaylor. But inside the room, the fire had just begun. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8, The Queen's Gambit. The council chamber of Winden Palace was designed to intimidate. High vaulted ceilings, tapestries depicting the conquest of the ancient kings, and a long obsidian table where the fate of the region was decided. Today, it felt like a courtroom. Chancellor Thorn sat at the head of the table, flanked by the 12 High Lords of Gaylor. They wore their ceremonial robes, but their eyes were hungry. The motion is simple, Thorn announced, his voice echoing off the cold stone. A vote of no confidence. Monarch Ketchum is comatose. The physicians state his neural pathways are fried. Gaylor cannot be ruled by a vegetable. He saved Bolonlia, Leon argued from the floor. The former champion stood alone, his arm in a sling, looking exhausted. He stopped a nuclear event. He acted without authorization. Thorn slammed his hand on the table. He allowed the terrorist leader to escape to save a single town. That is emotional weakness, not strategic leadership. We need a ruler who can make the hard choices. And who would that be? A voice cut from the massive double doors. You, Chancellor. Sonia walked in. She wore a lab coat over a disheveled dress, her hair in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes. She carried a heavy black briefcase. Professor Magnolia, Thorn sneered. This is a closed session. I'm not here as a professor, Sonia said, walking to the center of the room. She dropped the briefcase on the table with a heavy thud. I'm here as the monarch's wife. A murmur rippled through the lords. Technically, Thorn smiled thinly, the marriage was never consummated. The contract is voidable. Open the case, Sonia said. Thorn paused. He looked at the case, then at Sonia. Her eyes were hard, glassy with fatigue, but sharp as flint. He clicked the latches. Inside, there were no papers. Just a single holographic projector. It hummed to life, projecting a web of bank transfers in the air. What is this? These are the funding logs for the Type Null project, Sonia explained, her voice steady. Dating back 5 years. Before Verglass went rogue. Before the syndicate. She pointed to a highlighted name on the ledger. Shell Company Iron Rose. Registered to a private trust. She looked directly at Thorn. Yours, Chancellor. The room went deathly silent. You funded the early research, Sonia accused, her voice rising. You wanted a weapon to replace the unreliable champions. You created Verglass. And now you want to depose Ash because he's the only one cleaning up your mess. Thorn's face went purple. This is slander. Fabricated. I have the metadata, Sonia interrupted. I have the emails. I have the audio logs. She placed her hand on the projector. If this vote goes through, if you try to take his crown, I release this to the world. Every news outlet. Every region. Thorn stared at her. He saw the trembling in her hands, but he also saw the absolute resolve. She wasn't bluffing. You would burn the government to save one boy? Thorn whispered. I would burn this entire palace to the ground, Sonia replied coldly. Boom. The floor shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. The stained glass windows behind Thorn shattered inward, spraying the council with shards of colored light. Sirens began to wail, not the police sirens, but the deep, guttural horn of the air defense network. What was that? Leon shouted, drawing a pokeball. The doors to the chamber burst open. A royal guardsman stumbled in, blood streaming from his helmet. Attack, the guard screamed. They're in the airspace. Drop pods. Hundreds of them. Sonia grabbed her tablet. The screen was a sea of red warning lights. It's Verglass, she gasped. He didn't run. He circled back. Why? Thorn stammered, cowering under the table. Why attack Winden? Sonia looked at the medical readouts on her screen. Her blood ran cold. He knows Ash is down, she whispered. He's coming to finish the job. The siege of Winden was not a battle, it was a suffocation. Dar. Verglass didn't send an army of Pokemon. He sent machines. Massive, floating pylons dropped from the sky, embedding themselves into the streets of the capital. As soon as they landed, they emitted a low-frequency pulse, the silence. It was the anti-aura field, amplified. Inside the palace, chaos reigned. Guards tried to release their Pokemon, but the balls sparked and failed. The containment beams wouldn't materialize. The connection was severed. My Charizard won't come out. Leon yelled, shaking his Ultra Ball. The lock mechanism is jammed by the frequency. It's the pylons. Sonia shouted, running down the corridor with Leon. They're scrambling the ID chips inside the balls. Then we fight with our hands. They reached the war room. Nessa was already there. She had torn the skirt of her gown to allow movement, kicking off her heels. She stood over the tactical map, shouting orders into a hardline radio. Raihan. I don't care if Duraludin can't Gigantamax. Use the buildings as cover. Trap the ground units in the alleyways. She looked up as Sonia and Leon entered. Status? Nessa barked. She didn't look like a model. She looked like a warlord. The perimeter is breached, Leon reported grimly. The royal guard is overwhelmed. The enemy is using those cyborg soldiers. They have shock rifles. Where is B? Sonia asked, panic rising. She's at the main gate, Nessa said, pointing to a flashing red dot on the map. Holding the line. The main courtyard of Winden Palace was a kill zone. Smoke obscured the golden statues. Laser fire cut through the air. The Syndicate's foot soldiers, mercenaries in exosuits, were pushing forward, stepping over the unconscious bodies of the royal guard. Between them and the heavy oak doors stood one woman. B breathed in. The air tasted of ozone and cordite. She wore her tattered GI from the pilgrimage, her knuckles taped. Target acquired, a mercenary leader shouted, aiming his rifle. Eliminate the pillar. B didn't wait. She moved. Without Pokemon, most trainers were helpless. But B was a martial artist first, a trainer second. She ducked under the plasma bolt, closing the distance in a slide. She swept the mercenary's legs, shattering the servomotors in his exosuit. As he fell, she rose, driving a palm strike into his helmet's faceplate. The glass cracked. He went limp. Next, B said, her voice calm amidst the explosions. 3 more rushed her. Macamp. B yelled, grabbing the pokeball at her belt. Break out. The ball sparked. The jammer was working. But Macamp was her partner. Their bond wasn't digital, it was physical. Inside the ball, Macamp roared, fighting the suppression field. The ball shook violently. Click. It opened. Not a full beam, but enough. Macamp materialized, looking groggy, the red light of the jammer causing him pain. Focus. Be commanded, back to back with her ace. Ignore the headache. Fight. Macamp roared, shaking off the dizziness. He grabbed a mercenary with 2 hands and threw him into another. They fought like a whirlwind, B covering Machamp's blind spots, Macamp acting as a living shield for B against the heavy fire. It was a dance of violence. But there were too many of them. A heavy mech, a Type, Omega prototype, crashed through the gate. It was 12 feet tall, armed with a rotary cannon. B. Nessa's voice crackled in her earpiece. Fall back. They're flanking you through the sewers. They're heading for the medical wing. BEA's eyes widened. Ash. She turned to Macamp. Retreat. We have to guard the king. The retreat was bloody. The syndicate forces pushed them deeper into the palace. The luxurious hallways became trenches. Eventually, they were cornered. The double doors to the medical wing were barricaded with furniture. Inside, the room was dimly lit by emergency red lights. Ash lay in the bed, motionless. The life support machine beeped steadily, oblivious to the war outside. Sonia was typing furiously at the bedside terminal, trying to override the jamming pylons. Nessa stood by the window with a harpoon gun she had pulled from a display case. B stood at the door, bleeding from a cut on her forehead, Macamp panting beside her. Leon was outside in the corridor, holding the last line of defense with his Charizard, who had managed to force its way out of the ball through sheer rage. Boom! The walls shook. Plaster rained down on Ash's face. They're blowing the door, B said, wiping blood from her eye. Leon can't hold them forever. Nessa walked over to the bed. She looked at Ash. Wake up, she whispered fiercely. Damn it, Ash, wake up. We're losing. Sonia sobbed, her fingers slipping on the keyboard. The firewall is gone. They're hacking the life support. They're going to turn it off remotely. The monitor spiked. Ash's heart rate jumped. He can hear us, Sonia gasped. The aura, it's reacting to our stress levels. Outside, a massive explosion rocked the corridor. Leon shouted, then went silent. The doors to the room blew inward. Splinters of wood flew like shrapnel. Through the smoke, Dr. Verglass walked in. He was flanked by 4 Type, null beasts and a squad of elite soldiers. Ladies, Verglass smiled, adjusting his glasses. He stepped over the debris. A valiant effort. Truly. But math always wins. B stepped forward, her body trembling with exhaustion. Macamp raised his fists. You do not pass, B growled. Verglass sighed. He raised a remote. Suppress. The Type, nulls unleashed a combined psychic wave. It hit Macamp and B like a physical wall. They were thrown backward, slamming into the far wall. Macamp slumped, unconscious. B tried to stand, but her legs failed her. Nessa raised the harpoon gun. Get out. One of the soldiers fired a stun round. It hit Nessa in the shoulder. She cried out, dropping the weapon, falling to her knees by the bed. Sonia backed up until she hit the wall, shielding the data drive with her body. Verglass walked to the foot of the bed. He looked down at Ash. The boy king, Verglass mused. Magnolia always said you were special. A variable I couldn't calculate. But look at you now. He pulled a pistol from his lab coat. A simple, kinetic weapon. No miracles today, Verglass said. Just physics. He aimed at Ash's heart. Nessa screamed, throwing herself over Ash's legs. No. B crawled forward, blood in her eyes. Ash. Sonia closed her eyes, paralyzed by terror. Fear. Ash felt it. Deep in the darkness of the coma, where he was wrestling with the violet storm of Eternatus, he felt it. He felt Nessa's desperate warmth. He felt BEA's broken pride. He felt Sonia's terror. They are hurting my team. The thought wasn't a human thought. It was a dragon's thought. It was a king's thought. The violet storm in his mind stopped swirling. Ash grabbed it. He didn't fight it anymore. He claimed it. In the hospital room, the air pressure dropped. The windows frosted over instantly. Verglass's finger tightened on the trigger. Beep. Beep. BE, the heart monitor flatlined. Pity, Verglass muttered. He fired. The bullet flew. And stopped. It stopped 3 inches from Ash's chest. It hovered there, spinning in mid-air, caught in a web of violet energy. Verglass's eyes widened. What? Ash's eyes opened. They weren't brown. They weren't blue. They were a glowing, piercing violet, with a vertical slit pupil. The medical sensors exploded. The wires attached to Ash's chest melted. Ash sat up. He didn't look at Verglass. He looked at Nessa, who was clinging to his legs. He reached out a hand, his skin humming with power, and brushed a tear from her cheek. I'm up, Ash said. His voice echoed, layered with a low, draconic resonance. He looked at Verglass. The scientist stepped back, his cool demeanor shattering. Impossible. The neural damage. Ash swung his legs out of bed. He was wearing a thin hospital gown, barefoot. He stood up. He staggered slightly, his muscles atrophied, but the violet aura caught him, holding him upright like a puppet on strings of light. You came into my house, Ash said softly. He took a step. The floor cracked. You hurt my friends. He took another step. The type, null beasts began to whine, backing away, their instincts screaming predator. And you tried to kill me. Ash raised his hand. The bullet that was hovering in the air turned around. Bad move. Ash flicked his wrist. The bullet shot back, hitting the pistol in Verglass's hand, shattering it. Kill him. Verglass screamed, clutching his broken hand. All units. Fire. The soldiers opened fire. B. Ash shouted. He didn't look at her, but he sent a pulse of aura into her body. Shield. B felt the energy hit her. It wasn't just adrenaline, it was power. Her pain vanished. She leaped up, her speed amplified tenfold. She grabbed a heavy oak table and flipped it with one hand, creating a barricade that absorbed the plasma fire. Nessa. Water. Ash commanded. He grabbed a vase of water from the bedside table and threw the water into the air. Nessa sensed his intent. She channeled her energy. The water didn't splash, it expanded, drawing moisture from the air, becoming a swirling vortex of hydropressure. Sonia. The jammer. Ash yelled, pointing at the window. Sonia understood. Pikachu. Irontail the pylon. Pikachu isn't here. Sonia cried. Yes he is, Ash grinned violently. He whistled. From under the bed, a yellow blur shot out. Pikachu had been hiding there the whole time, refusing to leave Ash's side. Ash channeled the violet energy into Pikachu. Volt tackle. Go. Pikachu turned into a violet gold lightning bolt. He smashed through the frosted window, leaping across the gap to the floating pylon outside. He struck the generator core. Boom. The silence broke. The jamming field died. Balls are active. Sonia screamed. Ash reached for his belt, which hung on the chair. He clipped 6 balls to his waist. Verglass, Ash said, walking forward. The violet glow around him was intensifying, forming the spectral shape of a dragon's wings behind him. You wanted to see the power of Eternatus? Ash grabbed a pokeball. Dracovish. Dragonite. Lucario. Jengar. Surfetched. He threw them all at once. The room filled with his team. But they were changed. The violet aura from Ash was leaking into them, giving them a pseudo-Dynamax glow without the size increase. They were supercharged. Clear the room, Ash ordered. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. Lucario moved so fast he was invisible, dismantling the exosuits. Dragonite grabbed a type, Null, and threw it out the broken window. Dracovish bit the rotary cannon of the mech in half. Verglass backed into the corridor, his forces decimated in seconds. You're a monster, Verglass whispered, staring at Ash. Ash walked out of the room, stepping over the debris. He stood in the ruined corridor. Leon was there, leaning against the wall, staring at Ash with wide eyes. Ash looked at his hands. The violet glow was fading, returning to his usual blue, but the power remained. No, Ash said, looking at Verglass. I'm the monarch. Verglass turned and ran. He sprinted down the hall toward the roof extraction point. Let him go, Ash said, stopping Lucario from chasing. What? B asked, limping to his side. He will return. He's running to his ship, Ash said. He looked at Sonia. Can you track the ship? Yes, Sonia nodded, tapping her tablet. If he launches, I can trace his trajectory back to his main base. That's why I let him go, Ash said. He leaned against the wall, the burst of energy fading, leaving him trembling. Nessa was there instantly, wrapping her arm around his waist to hold him up. You're okay, she sobbed into his neck. You're okay. Ash looked at them. Battered, bloody, terrified, but standing. We held the line, Ash whispered. He looked at the window. The pylons were falling. The syndicate ships were retreating, their surprise attack failed. Sonia, Ash said, his voice weak but clear. Yes, Ash? Send a message to the council. Ash's eyes hardened. Tell them the king is awake. And I'm coming for my meeting. Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9, The God Killer. The storm above Hammerlock was unnatural. It wasn't rain, it was a swirling vortex of black and violet clouds, rotating around the spire of the energy plant like water circling a drain. Lightning didn't strike the ground, it struck the tower, feeding it. Ash stood on the ramp of the armored transport, the wind whipping his hospital gown, which he had swapped for a tactical vest and cargo pants Leon had dug out of storage. He looked pale, gaunt, but his eyes were burning with that strange, vertical slit intensity that hadn't faded since he woke up. We're crossing the threshold, Leon shouted from the cockpit. The air pressure is dropping. It's the energy draw. Verglass is pulling everything the plant has. He's trying to jumpstart the darkest day again, Sonia yelled over the engine roar, clutching her tablet. But without Eternatus. He's using the raw energy to power something else. Drop us, Ash ordered. We're too high. Nessa protested, checking her harness. We won't fall, Ash said. He didn't explain. He simply stepped off the ramp into the void. Arceus, give me strength, B muttered, and jumped after him. Nessa and Sonia followed, screaming as they plummeted toward the dragon-headed entrance of the Hammerlock Stadium. Ash didn't use a parachute. He didn't use a flying Pokémon. He extended his hand, and the violet aura erupted from his skin. It caught him, and it caught the three women, slowing their descent instantly. They touched down on the stone bridge leading to the entrance with the grace of feathers. Ash stumbled immediately, coughing violently. The expenditure of power was eating him alive. Ash. Nessa was at his side, supporting his weight. Save it for the fight. I'm trying, Ash wheezed, wiping blood from his lip. But the energy, it wants to be used. It's loud. The massive doors of the energy plant were sealed. Macamp. B released her ace. Dynamic punch. The four-armed superpower slammed his fists into the steel. The doors groaned and buckled, flying inward. They entered the belly of the beast. The interior of the energy plant was no longer a human facility. It was a cathedral to madness. The walls were lined with stasis tubes containing hundreds of Pokémon, not dead, but suspended, their bioenergy being siphoned into thick cables running toward the central lift. "He's draining them," Sonia gasped, horror washing over her. "Like batteries." "We end this now," B growled. They reached the central elevator. It was a massive platform, large enough for a tank. Ash slammed his hand on the control panel, frying the lock with a pulse of electricity. The platform began to rise. As they ascended toward the summit, Ash looked at his team. "Listen to me," Ash said, his voice echoing slightly. "Up there. I can feel it. It's not like anything we've fought. It doesn't have a soul." "We've fought robots before," Nessa said, checking the magazine of her harpoon gun. "Not like this," Ash shook his head. "Verglass didn't just build a robot. He tried to build a god." He looked at each of them. "I can't beat it alone. My Pokémon, they're strong, but they can't touch this thing. I need you." "You have us," Sonia said, her voice shaking but firm. "We're right here." "No," Ash stepped closer, his violet eyes piercing. "I need you. You're mine. I'm going to open the link. All the way." Sonia blinked. "Ash, a full neural sync? That's theoretical. The strain on your brain, it'll kill me if I hold it too long," Ash admitted. "But if I don't do it, we all die in 5 minutes." The elevator shuddered. They had reached the top. The doors hissed open. The summit of Hammerlock Tower was an open-air platform, usually reserved for the Clash of Legends. Now, it was the throne room of Dr. Verglass. The scientist stood at the far edge, overlooking the swirling storm. He wore a suit of white exo-armor, pulsating with blue veins of energy. In the center of the arena stood the machine. It was 12 feet tall. It hovered, defying gravity. Its body was a sleek, synthetic white carapace, modeled after the alpha Pokémon, Arceus. But where the god had a wheel of golden plates, this thing had a jagged, rotating ring of dark matter. Its face was a blank, black glass visor. "Welcome," Verglass turned, his voice amplified by the armor. "To the future. Step away from the console, Verglass." Leon shouted, running onto the platform with Charizard. "It's over. The council has surrendered. You have no backing." "The council?" Verglass laughed. "I bought the council 10 years ago. And I don't need backing. I have type, Omega." He gestured to the machine. Type, Null was a failure because it tried to replicate God with biology. Biology is weak. It feels pain. It feels fear. Omega is pure syntax. It has programmed into it the type-shifting ability of the Arceus system, but optimized. No delay. No fatigue. It's an abomination, B spat. "It is the cure," Verglass corrected. "Target, Ash Ketchum. Priority, erase." The machine, type, Omega, didn't move. It simply existed, and then it didn't. It teleported. There was no sound. 1 second it was in the center, the next it was directly in front of Leon. "Charizard, Dragon Claw." Leon screamed. Charizard swung. Type, Omega's ring shifted to a shimmering pink. Fairy type. The Dragon Claw shattered against the armor harmlessly. Omega raised a hand. A point-blank blast of energy, Hyper Beam, erupted. Leon and Charizard were blasted backward as if hit by a train. They slammed into the far wall, Charizard groaning, unable to stand. "Leon!" Ash screamed. Fast, be noted, her eyes widening. Too fast. Ash, look out. Nessa yelled. Omega teleported again, appearing behind Ash. It raised a blade of pure energy. Pikachu, Iron Tail. Pikachu intercepted, his tail glowing white. Clang. Omega's ring turned gray. Steel type. It caught the tail with one hand. It looked at Pikachu with its faceless visor. Inefficient, the machine's synthesized voice spoke. It squeezed. Pikachu screamed as electricity discharged uselessly into the ground-type insulation the machine instantly adopted. Let him go. Ash roared. Ash threw a punch. Not a command. A punch. His fist, wrapped in violet aura, connected with the machine's faceplate. The glass cracked. Verglass gasped. What? Ash's punch sent the machine skidding back 3 feet. Pikachu fell free, gasping. Ash stood there, his hands smoking. He was breathing hard, the exertion of physical combat mixed with aura manipulation taking its toll. You want to fight? Ash hissed, his voice layering with the roar of a dragon. Let's fight. He closed his eyes. Open. It wasn't a word. It was a sensation. Sonia, Nessa, and Bee gasped as the world fell away. Suddenly, they weren't standing behind him. They were in him. They could feel his heartbeat, thumping like a war drum. They could feel the pain in his ribs. They could feel the burning, nuclear heat of the Eternatus energy in his gut. Sonia, Ash's thought was clear as a bell. I need your eyes. Sonia's mind raced. In the link, she saw what Ash saw, but processed through her intellect. She saw the energy patterns of type, Omega. She saw the lag time between type shifts, 0.4 seconds. Nessa, Ash thought. I need your flow. Nessa's spirit merged with his. The panic vanished, replaced by the calm, relentless pressure of the deep ocean. She felt the battlefield not as ground, but as currents. Bee, Ash thought. I need your strike. BEA's discipline flooded him. The fear of death evaporated. There was only the target. There was only the break. Ash opened his eyes. They were glowing with 3 colors now, blue, orange, and violet. Team, Ash spoke, and 3 voices overlaid his own. Full assault. He released them all. Lucario, Dragonite, Gengar, Dracovish, Surfetched. Type, Omega hovered, calculating. Threat level rising. Engaging extermination mode. The ring on its back spun violently. It fired a barrage of judgment beams, multicolored lasers raining from the sky. Sonia, pattern analysis. Vector 4, 7, and 9. Ash didn't look up. Left. Right. Duck. The Pokémon moved in perfect unison. Dragonite wove through the lasers without a scratch. Nessa, the floor is wet from the storm. Conductive. Pikachu, Gengar. Thunder and sludge wave. Electrify the toxins. Gengar spewed a wave of sludge across the wet floor. Pikachu blasted it. The floor became a bubbling, electrified trap. Type, Omega touched down and immediately sparked, its sensors scrambling. Error, the machine droned. Environmental hazard. B, it is off balance. Strike the core. Lucario. Surfetched. Ash moved with them. He wasn't standing back. He was running alongside Lucario. Type, Omega shifted to Ghost type to phase through the physical attack. Sonia, it's Ghost. Dark attacks now. Dracovish. Crunch. Dracovish, lagging behind, lunged. His massive jaws, glowing with dark energy, clamped down on the machine's arm before it could solidify. Crunch. Metal screamed. The machine thrashed, shifting to fighting type to break the jaw grip. Nessa, release and flow. Dragonite, hurricane. Dracovish let go instantly. Dragonite, hovering above, unleashed a massive hurricane. The wind caught the machine, slamming it into the ground. Verglas was screaming at his console. Adapt. Adapt faster. The machine stood up. Its ring shattered. It began to glow with a chaotic, shifting light. Overdrive, Verglas whispered. It's using every type at once. The machine roared, a digital scream. It grew larger, energy leaking from its joints. It wasn't shifting types anymore. It was becoming pure destruction. It's going to nuke the tower, Sonia's thought panicked in Ash's mind. The energy density is critical. Ash stopped. He stood 10 meters from the exploding god machine. We can't dodge this, Ash thought. Then we break it, B thought. We drown it, Nessa thought. We dismantle it, Sonia thought. Ash smiled. It was a terrifying, beautiful smile. Lucario, Ash said. Lucario stepped forward. He held out his paws. Ash walked up behind Lucario. He placed his hands on Lucario's shoulders. Everyone, Ash commanded. Lend us your power. Dragonite, Jengar, Dracovish, Surfetched, Pikachu. They all gathered around. They didn't attack. They pushed their energy toward Ash and Lucario. And through the link, the girls pushed too. Sonia's analytical precision honed the aura into a needle point. Nessa's fluid power gave it momentum. BEA's fighting spirit gave it mass. And Ash's raw, violet eternatus energy gave it life. A sphere of aura formed between Lucario's hands. It wasn't blue. It was a swirling galaxy of colors, gold, blue, pink, and deep, void-like violet. Type, Omega fired its final beam, a beam of pure white erasure. Aura sphere. Ash and Lucario roared together. They fired. The sphere didn't travel, it simply erased the distance. It met the white beam and consumed it. It hit Type, Omega in the chest. There was no explosion. There was a silence. A total, absolute silence. The machine dissolved. Armor, circuitry, code, it all turned into dust, scattered by the wind. The sphere continued, hitting the heavy blast doors behind the machine and vaporizing them, exiting into the night sky where it detonated like a new star, lighting up the entire Galar region for a split second. Ash gasped. The link snapped. He fell forward. Lucario caught him. Verglas stood alone on the platform, his masterpiece gone. He looked at the dust. He looked at Ash, who was being held up by his friends. You cheated, Verglas whispered, his mind snapping. You used variables that don't exist in the equation. That's called a heart, you idiot, Nessa said, stepping over the rubble. She leveled her harpoon gun at him. Verglas laughed. It was a high, broken sound. The equation must balance, he giggled. He slammed his fist onto a red button on his wrist. Warning. Reactor core destabilized. Self-destruct sequence initiated. T-minus 60 seconds. The tower groaned. The floor began to tilt. If I can't be the architect, Verglas smiled, backing toward the edge of the tower, I will be the demolitionist. He opened his arms and fell backward off the spire, plummeting into the storm clouds below. He triggered the core. Sonia screamed, looking at the vibrating floor. The whole energy plant is going to go. It'll take out half of Hammerlock. We have to stop the reaction. Leon yelled, stumbling over with Charizard. We can't. Sonia cried. It's a cascading failure. It's physical. Ash pulled himself up. He looked at the elevator. It was dead. We have to get the energy out, Ash rasped. How? B demanded. Ash looked at the sky. The storm was still raging. We don't stop it, Ash said. We aim it. He looked at Leon. Get everyone on Charizard and Dragonite. Get them clear. And you? Leon asked, dread filling his voice. I'm going to the core, Ash said. I'm going to channel the blast up. Into the atmosphere. You'll die, Nessa grabbed him. No. Absolutely not. I have the resistance, Ash said, pointing to the fading violet veins on his arms. I'm the only one who can touch that energy and live long enough to redirect it. Ash, go. Ash roared. The violet aura flared one last time, pushing them back. I am the monarch. This is my order. Go. He turned and ran. He ran back into the collapsing building, toward the screaming reactor. Ash. Nessa screamed, but B grabbed her. He has made his choice, B said, tears streaming down her face. Do not dishonor it. They scrambled onto the dragons. Leon and Dragonite took off, carrying the weeping women away from the spire. Ash reached the core room. It was a blinding white sun of instability. He walked into the light. Okay, Ash whispered to the roar. Let's see who's louder. He opened his arms. He didn't fight the energy. He hugged it. Lucario, stay in the ball. No, master. Lucario materialized beside him. We do this together. Ash smiled. He hugged his partner. All right. Up we go. Ash screamed. He pushed. He pushed with everything he had left, every badge, every battle, every friend. Boom. From the outside, the citizens of Hammerlock saw a miracle. The tower didn't explode outward. A pillar of light, straight and true, shot upward from the spire. It pierced the clouds, pierced the atmosphere, and shot into space. It lasted for 10 seconds. Then, silence. The top of the tower was gone. Melted slag. Charizard hovered in the quiet air. Ash? Nessa whispered into the comms. Static. Ash. Sonia screamed. Nothing. Then, a faint, crackling sound. Pika. It wasn't a voice. It was a signal from a tracker. I have a heartbeat. Sonia gasped, staring at her tablet through blurry eyes. It's faint. It's barely there. But it's there. Where? B demanded. In the rubble, Sonia pointed. Get us down. Now. They dove. They landed on the scorched roof. The heat was intense. In the center of a crater of melted steel, a blue glow persisted. Lucario was on his knees, turned to stone, crystallized by the energy overflow. But his arms were wrapped around something. B ran forward. She smashed the crystal shell around Lucario's arms. It shattered. Inside, curled into a ball, burned, broken, but breathing, was Ash. Lucario crumbled into dust, fading back into his pokeball to regenerate. He had taken the brunt of the physical heat. Nessa fell to her knees, pulling Ash's head into her lap. He's alive, she sobbed. He's alive. Ash's eye cracked open. It was brown again. The violet was gone. He looked up at them. At the smoke-filled sky. Did we win? He whispered. B took his hand, pressing it to her forehead. Yes, Monarch, she wept. We won. Ash closed his eyes. Good. I'm sleepy. He passed out. The storm clouds broke. For the first time in weeks, the sun hit the city of Hammerlock. The war was over. The rain had begun. Chapter 9 and Chapter 10, The New Dawn. The silence in Winden Palace was different now. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of a prison, nor the terrified silence of a siege. It was the quiet of a house that had survived a hurricane and was finally, deeply, resting. Ash stood in front of the full-length mirror in the royal suite. He looked different. It had been 2 weeks since the hammerlock incident. The doctors had finally cleared him for duty, though they had grumbled about his abnormal regenerative factors. He buttoned his shirt, a simple white collared shirt, leaving the top button undone. He winced slightly. Running down the center of his chest, visible just above the sternum, was a new scar. It wasn't pink or jagged. It was a fractal pattern, like a lightning strike trapped in skin, glowing very faintly violet when he took a deep breath. "Stop picking at it," a voice said from the doorway. Ash turned. Nessa was leaning against the frame. She wasn't wearing her gym uniform or a ball gown. She wore jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair down in loose waves. She looked softer, though the steel in her eyes remained. "I'm not picking," Ash lied. "I'm inspecting." "It looks badass," B said, walking past Nessa into the room. She carried a tray with a teapot and 4 cups. She set it down on the table with precise movements. "A warrior's mark. It proves you held the sky." "It proves he's reckless," Sonia added, following them in. She was scrolling through a data pad, looking pleased. "But, effective. Ash, have you seen the morning report?" Ash sat on the edge of the bed, pulling on his boots. "I try to avoid reports. They usually involve people yelling at me." "Not this time," Sonia smiled, sitting next to him. She turned the pad around. "Former Chancellor Thorne indicted on treason charges. High Council dissolved pending reform. Monarch Ketchum approves Pokemon Bill of Rights." "Thorne is singing like a chattet," Sonia explained. "He gave up the names of every financier behind the syndicate in exchange for a lighter sentence. The entire corrupt network is being dismantled. Leon and the League are handling the arrests." Ash breathed out, a long, heavy exhale. "So it's over. The war part, at least." "The fighting is over," Nessa said, walking over to fix his collar. Her fingers lingered on his neck, brushing against the pulse point. "Now comes the hard part. Ruling." Ash stiffened. He looked at the 3 of them. This was the moment he had been dreading since he woke up. "About that," Ash said, his voice serious. "We need to talk. About the right of sovereignty." The room temperature seemed to drop a few degrees. B stopped pouring tea. Sonia lowered her tablet. Nessa's hand froze on his collar. "Go on," Nessa said, her voice dangerously calm. Ash stood up, walking to the window. He looked out at the city, rebuilding, alive, free. "The right was a wartime measure," Ash said. "It was invoked because Gaylor was unstable. Because the particle levels were critical. But we fixed the energy plant. The levels are stable. The syndicate is gone." He turned back to face them. "I had the legal team look at the old texts. Specifically, the Clause of Peace. Once the threat is neutralized and the king is established, the emergency powers are rescinded." He took a breath. "That means the political marriage is void. You aren't bound to me anymore. You don't have to be pillars. You can go back to your labs, your gyms, your dojos. You can have your lives back." Silence. Ash expected relief. He expected them to smile, maybe shake his hand, and plan a farewell dinner. Instead, B crushed the porcelain teacup in her hand. Dust and ceramic shards fell to the carpet. She didn't even look at her hand. She stared at Ash. "You are releasing us?" B asked. Her voice wasn't loud. It was terrifying. "I'm giving you a choice," Ash said, confused. "I forced you into this. I dragged you into a war. You almost died because of me. I'm setting you free." "You idiot," Sonia whispered. She stood up, tossing her tablet onto the bed. You absolute, dense, impossible idiot. Ash blinked. What? Nessa walked up to him. She poked him in the chest, right on the new scar. Hard. Ow, Ash flinched. You think we stayed because of a piece of paper? Nessa hissed. You think I jumped off a building in Hammerlock because the law said so? Ash stammered. I mean, we're a team, but, Ash, Sonia cut in, her voice softening but her eyes fierce. We aren't a team. We're a circle. Do you know what a circle is? It has no beginning and no end. It doesn't break. She took his hand. When you were in that coma, I didn't care about the kingdom. I didn't care about my research. I was terrified I'd lost my best friend. My partner. I have trained my whole life to find strength, Bea said, stepping over the broken cup shards. She stood in front of him, close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her. I thought strength was solitude. I thought reliance was weakness. You showed me that strength is shared. She took his other hand. Her grip was iron. I am not going back to Stow-on-Side to sit alone in a dojo. My fight is here. With you. Nessa grabbed his face between her hands, forcing him to look at her. You don't get to be the noble martyr and push us away, Ash Ketchum, Nessa said softly. You saved my city. You saved my life. You stole my heart. You don't get to give it back just because the war is over. Ash looked at them. Really looked at them. He saw the fatigue in Sonia's eyes from nights spent decoding Verglass's files. He saw the bruise fading on Bea's arm from the siege. He saw the fierce protectiveness in Nessa's posture. They weren't victims of the right. They were his queens. And they weren't going anywhere. Ash felt a lump in his throat. He laughed, a wet, shaky sound. Okay, Ash said. Okay. I get it. Good, Nessa kissed his forehead. Now sit down. You have a press conference in an hour, and if you go out there looking like you just rolled out of bed, I will have to hurt you. The plaza of Winden was packed. Not with terrified refugees, but with citizens. The flags of Gaylor flew high, not the old, stuffy crests of the nobility, but new banners. One for the gym challenge, one for the laboratory, and one for the crown. Ash stood on the balcony. He wasn't wearing the heavy, jewel-encrusted crown of the old monarchs. He wore his cap, turned forward for once, and a modified version of the champion's uniform, sleek, functional, black and gold. Pikachu sat on his shoulder, wearing a tiny, custom-made cape that Sonia had insisted on. Ash stepped to the microphone. The crowd roared. It was a sound of pure adoration. People of Gaylor. Ash shouted. He didn't use the royal voice. He just yelled, like he was commanding a battle. The crowd quieted. A lot has changed, Ash began. We've seen some dark stuff. We saw people try to turn our partners into tools. We saw fear try to tear us apart. He looked at the camera drone hovering nearby. But we also saw what happens when we stand together. We saw a gym leader save a city with a song. We saw a professor beat an army with a computer. We saw a fighter hold the line against machines. He gestured behind him. Sonia, Nessa, and Bea stepped forward. They weren't standing behind him. They stood next to him. The old laws said Gaylor needs a king to rule it, Ash continued. But I'm not here to rule you. I'm here to battle alongside you. He raised a fist. From today, the right of sovereignty is rewritten. No more secrets. No more tools. Gaylor is the region of the bond. And if anyone, tries to break that bond again, they answer to us. The cheer that went up shook the birds from the trees. Ash grinned. He looked at his partners. Was that okay? He whispered. Not too political. It was perfect, Sonia whispered back. Short and loud, B nodded approvingly. Very you. Now wave, Nessa instructed through her teeth, smiling dazzlingly at the crowd. And try not to trip. Later that evening, the palace was quiet again. The gala was over. The dignitaries had gone home. Ash, Sonia, Nessa, and B sat on the roof of the highest tower, the same roof where they had landed the transport during the siege. The scorch marks were gone, replaced by a garden of night-blooming glacidia flowers. They were eating pizza. Straight from the box. I can't believe the chef let you order this, Sonia laughed, pulling a slice of pepperoni free. I'm the king, Ash mumbled with his mouth full. I can order what I want. Besides, fancy food is too small. It has no nutritional balance, B critiqued, inspecting a slice before taking a massive bite. But, the cheese is acceptable. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars. So, Ash said, wiping tomato sauce from his chin. What now? Now. Nessa leaned back on her hands, looking at the moon. We rebuild. There's a lot of damage to the ecosystem. I have a project to restore the coral reefs in the south. I have to restructure the league, B said. The gym leaders were disjointed during the attack. We need a unified defense doctrine. I will be traveling to every dojo to implement new training. And I have the data drive, Sonia sighed, but she looked excited. Verglass discovered things about Dynamax energy that we never dreamed of. Dangerous things, but if we study them, we could solve the energy crisis forever. Cleanly. Ash nodded. He looked at his feet, swinging over the edge of the roof. Sounds like you guys are busy. And you? Sonia asked. What does the monarch do in peacetime? Ash looked up. His eyes drifted to the horizon, where the mountains met the sky. I've been thinking, Ash said. A king is supposed to know his land, right? Like, really know it. Ash, Nessa warned. If you say you're running away. Not running away, Ash corrected quickly. Touring. An official. Royal expedition. He looked at them with a spark in his eyes. There are parts of the crown tundra no one has mapped. There are rumors of new Reggie temples. There's the Isle of Armor. I can't rule from a desk, guys. I need to be out there. He paused. But I can't do it alone. I need a navigator. A bodyguard. And a scientist. The three women looked at each other. Sonia smirked. Well, field research is the best way to verify data. B cracked her knuckles. And the wilderness is the only place to truly test one's limits. The palace gym is insufficient. Nessa sighed, rolling her eyes, but she was smiling. And someone has to make sure you don't drown in a bog. Again. Ash grinned. It was the brightest thing on the roof. So, we're doing this. We're doing this, Sonia confirmed. When do we leave? B asked, standing up. Tomorrow. Ash suggested. At dawn, Nessa agreed. Ash stood up. He looked out over his kingdom. It wasn't a burden anymore. It was an adventure. He felt the connection to his Pokémon, Pikachu dozing on his lap, Lucario meditating in the garden below, Dragonite sleeping on the lower roof. And he felt the connection to the three women beside him. The circle of pillars. The Null Syndicate had tried to break the world by severing bonds. They had failed. Because some bonds weren't just data or magic. Some bonds were forged in fire. Ash reached out. Sonia, Nessa, and B put their hands on top of his. To the new dawn, Ash said. To the new dawn, they echoed. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of adventure. The story wasn't over. The story never really ended. As long as there was a horizon, they would chase it. Together. Chapter 10 End.